Okay, so I'm going to give it about 2 or 3 more minutes here, have everybody else trickle in, and then we'll get started. But yeah, for everybody that just showed up today, obviously today's session is going to be primarily about wholesale. So I'm just going to walk through some basics, kind of why you may want to consider doing wholesale in your personal Amazon business, what wholesale actually is, and then just some basics on how we're going to find some suppliers, a couple different methods that I have used pretty heavily in my business in the past, actually contacting those suppliers, and then starting to filter through some catalogs that you may get as well. We'll start here in a little bit. And of course, if anybody has any questions along the way, just pop it into the Amazon general chat and I'll answer any questions that I can. I see a lot of familiar faces in here. Gina, how are you doing? I haven't talked to you for quite some time. Mike 22, do you want to just mute yourself there just so we can't hear any noise coming from your end? Thank you very much. Okay, so I think it's about time to get started. If anybody else trickles in later, not a problem. They can always review anything that they miss on the YouTube video that I'm going to be recording. So yeah, as I mentioned, I just plan on doing a bit of a wholesale session today. So I'm a little bit more prepared than last time. I'm still kind of winging it as we go, but I just wanted to ensure that we actually cover some standard topics. So we're going to go everywhere from what is wholesale, why you should consider wholesale, how to actually find some wholesale suppliers, how you can contact those suppliers, and then we're going to also look at some basics on how to filter through some catalogs. And with the filtering of the catalogs, we're going to look at primarily manually sourcing through a catalog, which I believe is very important for you to understand how to do if you are doing the wholesale method. And then also just a brief introduction into ScanUnlimited, which can help kind of speed up and automate that process. I'm not going to go too deep into ScanUnlimited today. I am in talks with the company that owns ScanUnlimited, Carbon 6, thanks to OG Joe in our server today. We plan on doing a live session probably sometime mid to later this month, and we'll go over ScanUnlimited kind of in more detail for everybody if they're interested in it. So just to start off with, obviously, if anybody here is not familiar with wholesale, wholesale is a method that, in my opinion, is a step above the arbitrage business model. And it's the process of buying products typically in bulk from distributors, wholesalers, or directly from brands or manufacturers. And the reason why some people would want to consider wholesale for their business, either primarily or supplementary to their arbitrage business, is because in general it is a very scalable business model. Arbitrage is a relatively scalable model as well, but you're going to most likely come to a point where you're going to cap out. For most people, that's a couple $1,000,000 per year, but it's very difficult once you hit that point to go above and beyond that. With wholesale, it makes things a lot easier to go above and beyond that. And also with wholesale, items tend to be more widely available and replenishable. Whereas obviously with arbitrage, sometimes we have issues getting products continuously or replenishing those products. And an additional thing that's nice about wholesale is it does give a additional barrier of entry, especially for newer sellers, which in general tends to make items more stable for longer. Usually with wholesale, there tends to be a little bit less price tanking for listings overall. It definitely still does happen, but it's not typically as much of a concern as it is with arbitrage. And with most listings that you look at that are wholesale listings, the Keepa graph is pretty flat and pretty stable for a pretty long period of time. Okay. So now we're just going to talk about a couple different methods on how we can actually find wholesale suppliers. And again, as we go through here, if anybody wants to put anything in the chat if you have any questions about anything in particular I'm talking about. Feel free, and I'll answer them along the way. But the first kind of basic standard method to find a wholesaler is just simply by Googling it. This is a great way to start to kind of get introduced to finding new wholesale suppliers. You can find a ton of different wholesale suppliers just by Googling it. And then we'll talk about how to find some suppliers as well through the Amazon filtering method. So actually filtering out brands directly through Amazon, filtering a trade show directory, and then we can also briefly possibly discuss some additional methods such as filtering your competition or other Amazon sellers, and also using software such as Jungle Scout and things like that. Okay, so then to start off, I will start just searching for some suppliers. Again, I don't have anything really planned, so we're kind of just winging this as we go. But the way that I do it is I will just decide on either a specific brand I want to look at or a specific category, and either look for that brand directly and then try to find their wholesalers directly from them, or just like say we look for a health and beauty distributor, we can just type in something like health and beauty distributor Canada or whereverabouts you are. So in this case, we will go health and beauty distributor Canada. Okay. And then I just go through, and anything that looks promising to me, I open the site and do a bit of a deeper dive and see if we can find their contact information or send them an email. So obviously we look for key things like if it's a distribution company, if they have wholesale in their name. Fair is one that has been advertised quite a bit recently across things like Instagram. I have opened an account with Fair, but I find they're a little bit hard to filter through what they have because they kind of just throw a bunch of products from a bunch of different distributors at you at once, and it's kind of hard to filter through products through there, but that's definitely an option that could be viable for some people. And I just pull up a couple and then I start digging deeper into them as I go. Okay, so let's look at this guy. So I see this one, it's called THB Inc. Looks like they sell perfumes. So unless you're doing hazmat, this may not be one that you're interested in. Let's see here. So like they do have a section for wholesale customers. So immediately I assume that this is a wholesaler that sells fragrances and perfumes. So this isn't one that I would particularly contact because I don't do a lot of hazmat in my business. But if you do hazmat, this would be one that you could definitely contact. And then when you contact a wholesaler, you either come into their contact form, which is pretty typical, that looks like this, just to open up the initial contact with them. Some wholesalers, they have the application directly on their website, so you can print out a wholesale application, fill it out, and send it directly to them. Or they alternatively, they have an email and or phone number on their site as well, which would be a preferred method of contact. So in this case, I would just fill out, if this is a guy that interested me, I would just fill out my information. Company X. You can fill out a website, obviously, if you have it. I have my default address as Nunya Business. Okay. And it does look like they do drop shipping as well. That's obviously something I would not recommend doing. And then I would just copy something like similar to the scripts that I had shared a couple days ago in that download. So it is in this document. Whereabouts is it? Right here. You can just kind of format scripts like this for yourself, and these will just be literally copy and paste. And you can kind of adjust it as you go with certain distributors if you want to just put a little bit of additional flair in there, or if you're familiar with their company or any brands that they carry. But I would just copy something like this that just says, I found your company online and would love to have the opportunity to carry your products. Can you please let me know what is required to open up a wholesale account with your company? So that's typically good enough to start an email conversation with a wholesaler. So you just copy that, put it in their form here. And then if they ask for anything like a business license or GST registration, you might want to attach that here if it does look like it's a legit place. If it's somewhere that you're iffy about, you may want to hold off on submitting that and just either submit nothing or a blank sheet of paper until you actually contact them. And once you do contact distributors, I always recommend using something like a Sorry, somebody. Solomon, do you want to mute yourself there? If you don't, I'm going to have to mute you, and then you won't be able to talk at all. Thank you. Okay, so then I always recommend using something like a customer relationship manager, like what I have here. This was a free download that I released a little bit earlier this week, and this just helps you keep tabs on the companies that you've actually contacted, and to ensure that you don't recontact them if you don't have to, and you know when to follow up with them, or you know where you are at in the application process with them. So whenever I contact somebody, I always put it in here. So I would just take information like their website and their name. If they have an email address and phone number in here, I would stick that in here as well. So this guy looks like it is just called THBD Inc. If we could find an email address on their website, I would definitely stick that in there, but quite often you will not. So that's okay. Whenever I'm recording, my computer tends to be very slow. We didn't see a phone number. Whenever I first follow up with whenever I first contact a wholesaler, I always just personally list it as a high priority, because this is someone that I want to follow up within the next week or two. I always just indicate how I found that distributor, just so I know for my future knowledge. And then again, with this particular one, I like to indicate kind of where I am at in the stage of the wholesale process with that distributor. This isn't something that you necessarily have to do, but I like to do it. I just indicate that I've contacted them, and then once they respond to me, I indicate that we're communicating, and then if we're in negotiation or account setup, etc. This is currently an open contact here. And then I would just indicate when I contacted them and what I did. So I just put sent email via website contact form. So that is one way you can contact wholesale distributors. Obviously, that is not the most preferred way in most cases. Generally, if you are confident with talking to people on the phone, and if you are knowledgeable about your business and you can sound like a professional, it is usually favorable to contact a wholesale supplier via phone, or if you have them locally, if you can even meet them in person, that is excellent as well. A lot of wholesalers, especially a lot of the really big ones that have been around for a very long time, are kind of like the old boys style business people. A lot of them don't use computers very heavy. That's why you find that a lot of distributors have very outdated or very bad looking websites. They've been around for a very, very long time, some 50 to 100 plus years, and they do kind of like the old boy style of business, where it's like we sit down, we talk, we have dinner, maybe we have some drinks, and we actually do some business. So that is a big subset of distributors. So sometimes it is easier to get on the phone and contact those guys or go see them in person. If you do find some of the new wave of distributors that are obviously more and more and more, they're a little bit easier to communicate and open accounts with over the computer or by email. But again, for the old ones, I always like to try to follow up with them by phone first. And if you did, I would just use a similar script to something like this to open up the conversation. When you are starting with wholesale, it is very common that you will go through a lot of denial. You will be shut down quite a lot. In my personal experience, for the brands that we contact, we open about 10% of accounts of places that we actually contact. So if we contact 100 places, in general, we typically only expect to open about 10 accounts. And then out of those 10 accounts, typically only about 10% of those accounts actually end up being profitable. So wholesale is very much so a numbers game. It is something that you have to be contacting places continuously if you want to find the viable accounts. If you are afraid of rejection, if you cannot talk to somebody on the phone, this may not be a great business model for you. That would be something that I would personally work on. And I would, if you're scared of talking to somebody on the phone or scared of getting rejected, honestly, I would just recommend just calling as many people as you can. Get rejected 100 times, get over it. And the more that you realize that it's not a big deal and that it's easier to deal with than what you think, the quicker and easier you'll be able to actually have a real conversation with somebody and more successfully open an account. Okay, so I would put in here when I contacted them, and then with most distributors, if I send them, say, an email contact to begin with, I would typically follow up with them within about a week or two after that. A lot of distributors, they have a lot of emails coming in, and you can imagine if there's a lot of Amazon sellers sourcing the same distributors, they could get an influx of people that are trying to open up accounts with them. I would always follow up with them a second time. Again, I would prefer to contact somebody by phone if I didn't hear back from them, if we have a phone number available. If not, then I would contact them by email again, and I would just reword my thing saying that, hey, I contacted you on this date. I am really interested in opening an account with you guys. Can you please let me know what is needed to open an account with you guys? And that is why when we're on here, we'll grab an email address if we see it. So we'll go into the contact us. And we also see here that there's a section to become a wholesale customer. We'll see if that's different than the one that we saw, because this might actually be a direct application. Looks like it's the same page maybe. Oh, no, you just have to create an account online. So that might be the process that you might want to go through too. You might be able to create an account online. They might approve it within 24 hours to about a week, and then you might be able to start ordering from this distributor here. And I don't see any email available, so that would not be something that we can put into our CRM there. Okay, and that'd be about the context for this guy here. Then we would continue on to the next one. And again, you can tell like this is not super exciting, very sexy work, but this is something that you do have to do if you want to be successful in this business. This is a lot of the grunt work that a lot of people are not willing to do. This guy, I'm typically wary about distributors that display pricing publicly. Those tend to be lower caliber distributors, or distributors that are open to almost everybody. So for me personally, this probably wouldn't be a place that I would contact, but it might be a place that somebody's interested in. This might be a place that's more geared towards places like dollar stores. It looks like they kind of carry that kind of caliber of product. Could be viable in some cases, but I wouldn't personally contact them.
If I can add, Jordan,
Yep.
those type of sites, like if you can't put something in the cart, or you can register instantly an account, and then you can start buying instantly, those aren't really considered wholesale. That's what I've thought with trying with invoices from them with Amazon, and I wasn't accepted because those weren't considered authorized distributors.
For sure, for sure. And it's always tough to say who Amazon will consider an authorized distributor, because like as we know, they accept their own invoices for ungating purposes, so they're considering themselves as an authorized distributor. But yeah, in general, those types of places, they tend to be, again, lower caliber distributors, or places that are supplying places like just generic convenience stores, dollar stores, things like that. I could definitely see some profit being in there. Like I had a conversation with Joe before, and he mentioned that there's like a whole Korean section of distributors that I imagine probably have websites that are similar to that. If you can get in with some of those guys, I do imagine some of them could get some profit for you. I just wouldn't imagine in general those distributors would be very long-term, very profitable distributors over a very long period of time. Typically, the higher barrier of entry somebody has, or a distributor has, the more viable that distributor tends to be in general. Okay, so we'll take a look at this guy. So again, this kind of looks like a generic wholesale or brand website here. It looks like they carry a lot of different clothing brands. What else do they carry? So if you're interested in fashion, this may be one that you might want to look at. It looks like they carry some additional accessories. And it does look like they also carry some beauty products as well. And it looks like they do carry some very large brands. So this could be one that is worth the time. So let's see if they have any details of how to contact them here. So it looks like they are in Canada and in the US. We'll look at About Us and Retail Solutions. So we have a Work With Us section here. Okay, so we have an email, an address, and a contact form. So in my opinion, if you ever have an email directly on a website, I would usually email that actual address directly instead of contacting through their online form. That's just me personally. So I would copy that email. I would send them an email similar to the one that we just sent to this guy, but I would input their information into my CRM here. So this is ACI brands. And we'll just go through a couple of these guys because this process is pretty straightforward, but I do believe that this is, again, something that is very important for people to understand. And that email was info@acibrands.com. Did I copy that already? I did. And did we have a phone number on this guy? And you can obviously see that doing something like this would be a lot easier if you had multiple monitors. I don't believe I can share multiple monitors, so this is just the process that I'm doing right now. Okay, sent email. So I just indicated to myself, again, I sent an email to this distributor on February 6th, and again, I would come back in here about a week or two from now, and if I haven't heard back from them, I would either send them a follow-up email, or preferably, I would actually get on the phone and give them a call. Okay. So as I'm going through this here, does anybody have any questions so far? This is pretty basic, low caliber stuff so far. This one, Canadian Merchandiser, this looks like it might be a broker of different distributors or just a resource of different distributors. And if you find a website like this could also be a good method if you do find a website that lists a bunch of different distributors or suppliers. That can be something that you can source pretty easily. This guy, it doesn't look too interesting to me, but this might be something that might be worth going through and contacting some of these brands if they are distributors. But let's go find one or two more here.
Ben?
Yeah, what's up?
How important or unimportant do you feel it is to have a website when you're contacting wholesalers?
So there are definitely some very mixed opinions about that. Some people say that you have to have like a website or a landing page that gives some basic information about your website or about your business. I don't think there's any harm in having that, but depending on what you're doing with your distributors and how open you plan on being, I don't necessarily feel it's always necessary. Majority of the accounts that I've opened up, they don't even look at my website, or if they do, it's very briefly. I don't think having like a generic landing page makes that much of a difference. And in my opinion, with my distributors, most of the time I am extremely open with my distributors. They know almost always before I open an account with them that I am an Amazon seller. And if they want information about my store or what I sell, I'll literally just send them the link directly to my Amazon store.
And do you find that's more just for Canada or for both Canada and the US?
So it'd be very similar for Canada and the US. So I do have a couple US distributors as well, very similar process. And I have listened very heavily to other Amazon sellers, such as like people like Amazon Lit, and they have a very same opinion with the wholesalers that they contact in the US.
Thank you.
For sure. And of course, if you're planning on not telling your distributors that you're an Amazon seller, that may be a different case. That isn't something that I recommend, because I've talked to people about this in the past. If you're not open and honest with your distributors that you are an Amazon seller, that can create some problems for you in the future. It can also turn a potential long-term, very profitable relationship into one that's very short and a headache. And I have experienced this myself when I first started in wholesale as well. I was under the impression that no wholesalers wanted to deal with Amazon sellers, so I wouldn't tell them. And one of my suppliers, if I was open with them, which I am today, and they're cool with me selling on Amazon, they would have told me in advance that these specific brands cannot be sold on Amazon. But because I was not open with them, I did not tell them that. I bought these brands, and after a good 6 months of me buying and replenishing these items and going really heavy in these items, all of a sudden one day I get restricted, and Amazon shuts down applications for the entire brand across the board, because the brand is either selling themselves or they're selling it directly to Amazon now. and I got stuck with 10 grand worth of cost of goods of my product that I now had to deal with to try to liquidate.
Well, I totally agree about being open, letting them know. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for major headaches.
For sure. And there definitely are rebuttals that distributors have, and a lot of distributors by default say they don't want to deal with Amazon sellers, and I get that, but I believe a lot of that at the core comes to very inexperienced people contacting the distributors and basically being tire kickers. There's somebody that comes around, they act like they know what they're doing, and then they get a catalog and they're either not willing to spend any money, or they completely ghost the distributor because they don't know how to actively source a catalog, or they're too scared to spend the money, etc. And those are the type of people that kind of ruin it for the rest of us. So if you are able to by-step those objections that some distributors have, I do find that you can be a lot more successful with opening accounts. And we can definitely talk about that a little bit more later on as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
For sure. So I do see some familiar distributors here. So with this one is Modern Beauty. This is a big beauty supplier in Canada. Depending on how good you can talk to somebody, you may or may not be able to open accounts with places like this. So a lot of places like this require professional licenses to open accounts with. So it's going to depend on you and your personal skills with talking to the sales rep that is opening your account. I have gotten through and gotten some accounts at beauty distributors like this without a professional hair license, so it is possible, but it can be fairly difficult. I am familiar with Santa here. This is another one that I believe looks like one of those lower caliber distributors. They kind of look like just some people operating out of a back of a random warehouse in Ontario somewhere. And we'll open up this guy here as well. So yeah, like right away you can kind of identify if it is a distributor, because this does look like a storefront, but chances are if we look at the items, OG Joe mentioned Santa distributors are absolute jerks. Fair enough. I believe I had reached out to them many years ago to inquire about some stuff, and I never heard back from them. So, so all these ones, they don't display pricing. So that is typically what I like to see. You actually have to open up an account with them. Let's see if it tells us any requirements here. Yeah, and Joe mentioned that they have their own Amazon store as well, Santa distributors. Yeah, I've seen that as well. So that is another thing. If you are open with your distributors and you tell them that you sell on Amazon, you can also have that conversation to find out whether or not they sell on Amazon themselves. Because in most cases, you probably do not want to be trying to compete against your distributors unless they really understand the business model and they're cool with sharing those sales with you as well, which will probably not be the case in most cases. So it looks like these guys, they have a sign up section here and they have a contact section here. So yeah, like in this scenario, it looks like they actually have an application on their website. So let's take a peek at this guy. Okay, and so we can see right away in a case like this, it actually tells you to select if you're a salon owner, chair renter, spa owner, etc. So in a scenario like this, if you do want to proceed with opening an account, you can either fill out this application without entering that in, or more preferably, just reach out to the company directly, call them, get a real sales rep on the phone, and if you're able to have a conversation with somebody and they actually know that you're willing to do some business with them, be a professional person to deal with, and spend some good money with them, you may be able to bypass steps like this. So in my opinion, if you didn't have a professional license, which if you do, you're ahead of most people. If you didn't, I would recommend just reaching out to them directly, which I would just call this number right here. Because chances are, again, if you fill out your information here, you're going to have somebody, a very generic employee at Modern Beauty, probably reach back out to you, ask you if you have a salon license, and you tell them no, and then your conversation is probably going to stop right there. So if you are able to get on the phone with a sales rep and have a good conversation with them, you're more likely to succeed in this particular situation. So let's take a look at Santa here. So again, this is another example, one of the distributors that display pricing publicly. So again, this may be a lower caliber distributor. I know from experience, and Joe mentioned that they're jerks and they also sell on Amazon. So this is probably a distributor you wouldn't want to personally deal with anyway. Again, some people may have some success buying stuff like this, but you probably do not want to be trying to compete against your distributors. Vinny said most of the quality distributors nowadays ask for brick and mortar address. Is there any way we can bypass this request? So I actually disagree. I find as we continue on more and more into the digital age, less and less distributors are actually asking for a brick and mortar. There definitely are still some that do. And there are some distributors that will 100% only deal with you if you have a brick and mortar store. And that's just the nature and reality of the business. That is something that we just have to deal with. Matt MCU there, can you mute yourself? Just so I don't have any noise coming from your side there. Thank you. There are a subset of places that will just not want to deal with Amazon sellers because maybe they don't understand the business. Maybe they have had bad experiences with sellers in the past. Most places nowadays, if you can be a real professional and actually understand the business model, understand what they're trying to do, and be willing to spend money with companies, most places, if you are willing to have a good conversation with somebody, they are willing to bypass that. I mentioned in a couple months ago, I opened up a distributor account with a distributor that specifically stated on their website, we do not allow any third-party sellers, including Amazon, Walmart, or eBay. I contacted them anyway. I had a very good conversation with the sales rep, and he said, oh yeah, it's not a problem that you sell on Amazon. Oh, we just put that there just to avoid the people that are just more or less going to waste our time. If you have any additional specific questions, Vinny, certainly ask them, and I'll answer them as well as I can. JG asks, how can I optimize friends and family relationships that own and brick and mortar businesses? Would it be best to open wholesale accounts under their business and buy through them? That is certainly an option. And again, I have heard of many people that do this, especially with companies that will say, for example, only sell to pharmacies, because those accounts are very notoriously hard to open. So that can be viable in the short to even relatively long term. But if you do want to expand, if you are ordering more and more quantity, they may begin to have questions. They may want to come out and visit your location, and they might start to have questions of, okay, you bought all these products from us, or your family did. Why are they not on your shelves, or why is the volume not here? So again, that can create those kind of issues as well. So in my opinion, doing that is more so a short-term play. That is something you can definitely do to get started, but I would not expect to have a long-term relationship with a distributor if you do it that way. Jaden mentioned when you send an email, feel free to create an email signature for yourself and your company with a logo, etc. Or I found having a company domain name address useful versus just at gmail.com. 100%. So yeah, Gina asked earlier about having a website. I believe having a professional email is actually more important. A lot of distributors, again, they are weeding out a lot of the tire kickers nowadays, and just having something like a professional looking email that can get your foot in the door with more places versus just having like a generic landing page. Thanks for sharing, Jaden. Okay, so we got this guy here. So this is A Sung. So I have had some experience with them in the past. They do not have any public pricing, so that's good. Looks like they carry a ton of beauty products, and that is exactly kind of what we're looking for today. And it looks like they have a wholesale application right down here. So let's take a look to see what they need from us. So it looks like they are a Canadian wholesale distributor. Perfect. That's what we like to see. So new customers, please request a wholesale account. We'll review your applications and you link to set up an account. So it looks like, again, through here, you just come through here, you input your information. They do have a specific section for online reseller. So this is a scenario, again, if you put that in there, I'm completely cool with that. Just expect that you may have some places not even reach back out to you if you do put that in there. Or you might have some places that contact you and say, we do not sell to Amazon. If you do get that, if that does happen to you, I would recommend getting on the phone with them, calling them, and learning some of the rebuttals or objections that they might have and learning how to rebut them. We're not going to be going into too many objections today. That does become a little bit more advanced. You do have to spend a lot of time to kind of hone your craft and how you specifically speak to somebody. But as you do it more and more and more, you'll find that pretty much every objection can be refuted on your end, and you can pretty much answer anybody's objections with a very reasonable very reasonable answer that can get your foot slowly more and more in the door. Vinny mentioned, thanks, I met a couple distributors on recent trade show and they were happy to open an account if I order minimum order of $1,500 Canadian. Is that a good way to open an account? 100%, and that's one thing that we're going to talk about today. So going to physical trade shows is actually probably in my opinion, one of the best ways to meet and open accounts with wholesalers. Because like I said earlier, a lot of them are the very old school, old boy business types. And a lot of those types of distributors you're going to find at those trade shows, because that is a very old, tried and true method that they've been doing for decades. So you're going to find a lot of distributors there that you would have never found Googling or looking through directories. And to have a face-to-face with somebody, I think is a lot more powerful than just sending an email out to a distributor. I find it's a lot more effective and your open rate is a lot higher when you're able to physically meet somebody or talk to them on the phone. Physically meeting somebody is at the top, phone is below that, and then email would be at the bottom, in my opinion. So yeah, looks like this guy has a pretty typical application. So you go through, you fill out your information. They want a business license, which is pretty typical of distributors. So again, keep in mind that a business license is not your GST registration. It is just a business license with your local municipality. That is pretty easy to open. Pretty much in any city that you're in, you literally just have to spend, $50, $100 with your city or municipality, send them an application, and then in a couple of weeks they send you a business license. If they specifically ask for your GST registration or your business number, that's where you'd upload that. But in this case, it looks like they just asked for a business license. And anybody, incorporated person, sole prop, anybody should be able to get a business license pretty easily. And then you'd submit this guy, and chances are you'd hear back from them within a couple days. Okay, so that kind of goes over the basics of how to Google distributors. Now I'm going to go over a bit of a more advanced method of Amazon filtering. So with Amazon filtering, instead of Googling specific distributors, what we do is we dig deeper into the categories on Amazon directly and then try to pull out specific brands that we see may look viable and try to find the distributors or the brands directly, to buy directly from the brands or find their distributors. So if we're going to stick with, say, the health and beauty section for today, I'm going to open up the side menu here. We're going to shop by department, and I'm going to find health and beauty. And let's dig deeper into health and personal care. And then we should see a bunch of results at the bottom. Let's see if we see stuff or if we have to niche down some more. So we do. I don't see any information from my other extension that I use here called DS Amazon Quick View. So I'm going to click See All Results. So hopefully that pops up for us, so we can make some quicker decisions here. Jaden mentioned if you go to a trade show, make sure you carry a business card. 100%. Me and Jaden just had this conversation the other night. He mentioned that he was at a trade show recently, and everyone was asking for a business card. Again, that's more so a old school style of business. So a lot of those people do want business cards for sure. And considering you can get business cards for $10, $20, it's certainly worth the investment. Okay, so then when I niche down into whatever category I want to look in, you can go for the main category, or you can niche down even further. Say if you want to just look at places that are carrying vitamins, supplements, or certain diet and nutrition, you can do that. Then I would look through here, and I would get an extension like DS Amazon Quick View Extended, which is what you see down here. It gives you some information about the sales rank of the item, if Amazon is selling it, how many third-party sellers are on it, etc. With Canada, DS Amazon Quick View actually costs some money. I believe it's a $20 or $25 cost for a lifetime license. I believe there are some free alternatives that are out there. I just don't know exactly their name off the top of my head. If anybody does know a free alternative, please share it in the chat so we can let everybody know. But I would come through here and I would typically just pull up the items that Amazon is not on and that meet my specific sales rank requirements. And then I would try to reverse search that specific brand to see if I could find their brand directly or their distributor. And we may have to dig a couple pages in, because it's pretty typical that the first 1 to 5 pages are filled with Amazon only listings, which is pretty standard. So we'll let this guy load here. Likes to take its time when I'm recording. Okay, so I see this one. This one may be worth looking into, but to me that looks more so like a private label product. There's a couple FBA sellers on it, but that doesn't personally interest me. This guy here interests me, CanPrev. Let's take a look at that guy. This one, I can see that the brand name says Maple Holistics, and I see that it's sold by Maple Holistics down here. It does look like there are some additional sellers, so they may be willing to share the buy box. So let's take a quick look at that guy. Typically speaking, you don't want to compete with the brand directly, but if they are willing to share the buy box, that is completely cool. In this case, this is Sports Research. This is a Sports Research product. I can see SR up top, and they are the only FBA seller, so that is not something I'd personally dig deeper into. It's pretty hard to compete with the brand directly. If they want to dominate the price, they can definitely outprice you, no questions asked. And let's look at one more page here. And some of these big guys you may get used to, like say if you look at like Pampers or Huggies or like Axe or Gillette, you'll begin to notice that some of those brands are owned by huge companies like Procter and Gamble. You can definitely try to open up an account with Procter & Gamble, but their requirements are full truckloads at a time, and I believe you have to spend like $100,000 to $200,000 per year on minimum. So if you're not doing that kind of volume, you probably cannot open accounts with P&G directly. So I'm just scrolling through, just seeing the listings that Amazon is not on. This one kind of looks like a private label product, but let's take a peek at it anyway. Okay, so let's dig deeper into these guys. So this first one here, we can see that there are quite a few different FBA sellers on here. A lot of them have quite healthy stock, so that is probably an indication that this listing sells pretty decent. Just give me a second. I'm going to pull this over here and log into Keepa. One moment here. My computer just needs to load. Yeah, Vinny mentioned that he realized having business cards is important at the last trade show. He ordered a few dozen of business cards now. Definitely. That's something you definitely want to hand out to basically everybody when you're at a trade show. Load for me, please. There we go. So this does look like a very healthy Keepa chart. As I mentioned earlier, this listing is extremely stable. The price does not fluctuate whatsoever. We have Amazon hop on the listing very few amounts of times, but when, of course, it's going to reload on me. When they do hop on, it's for a very short period of time, and it does look like they're actually charging more than what the standard buy box is. So this is an item that does interest me. I would be very interested to find an account with the brand directly or their distributors. So then what I would do is I would just grab this brand here. If my computer can load properly, I apologize. Let's open up Google over here and we'll just look up CanPrev Canada. So I like going into the brand's website directly. Occasionally we are able to open up accounts directly with the brand. But more often than not, they will refer us to their distributors, or we can see a list of distributors on their website. And in my experience, brand direct deals can be very nice. Sometimes, in general, buying from distributors actually ends up netting you better pricing than buying from the brand directly, because distributors order items more in bulk than what you do, and they're able to get more savings, and they pass it on to you as the end consumer. So in most cases, you end up having a better experience buying from a distributor than direct from the brand. But if you are able to order from the brand directly and get good pricing, and potentially even say try to work out an exclusive deal. Those can be super powerful, but they are very rare to happen. So let's go down to the bottom here. I see if they have any information about distributors or wholesalers. I don't see anything here. I see where to buy. That'd be their stores. So then what I would do is I would click the contact us section here. Write to us using the help feature on the bottom right hand section of our website. Do they have an email? They have an email right here. So this is what I would actually email. So I'd grab this email, I'd go into my email client, and then I would grab a script like this guy. I grab one of the email scripts, but I would just adjust it and I would just indicate what is required to open up a wholesale account with your company, or are you able to introduce me to some of your local distributors. I would indicate that in my email, and then you might be able to get further with them, open an account directly with them, or chances are they will point you in the direction of multiple distributors that they have in Canada. Let's go back here and let's see if we can find any distributors by default. So we see a bunch of retailers. So let's go CanPrev Distributor Canada. So I just see CanPrev, I see retailers, I'm familiar with those retailers, these are retailers. This may be a distributor. Let's take a look at this one. It might just be an information website. But I don't see anything else here, so we might need to get the list directly from CanPrev. And this just looks like some type of retailer in Asia Pacific, so we probably wouldn't want to order from those guys anyway. Okay, cool. So then I would contact CanPrev, and again I would put their information in my CRM here. I'm going to avoid doing that today just to save some time, but we went through that process a little earlier. Let's take a look at this next guy.
What you can also do is, if I can interject, is you can also maybe send an email to CanPrev and tell them do you have any authorized distributor? That is another way to get a list of distributors that can carry a CanPrev but also can carry other products.
100%, yes, definitely, and that's. I'm sorry if I wasn't super clear on that. That's why I mentioned in this template here. You want to say something like, can you please let me know what is required to open up a wholesale account with your company, or introduce me to some of your local distributors? Because yes, that is a great way to rabbit hole into additional brands. Because yeah, if you find a distributor that carries CanPrev, chances are they're not an exclusive distributor of only CanPrev. They probably carry multiple other brands and likely thousands of other products. So thanks for sharing that, Eamon.
I have one question on this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, I tried this brand before, but they don't allow to sell on Amazon. So is there any way we can convince them, if they allow to sell on Amazon?
So you tried with CanPrev directly?
Yes.
Okay, and what did they tell you when they said you don't allow to sell on Amazon?
They directly refuse, you cannot sell on Amazon.
And that's all that they said?
Yes.
Okay. So, and that is pretty typical from some brands. So, firstly, when I open up my conversations, again, I'm honest with brands and distributors, but I do not open my conversations up with, hey, I'm an Amazon seller, okay? I would contact them first. I'd say, this is my company. I'm interested in carrying your products. Can you let me know how I can open up a wholesale account, or introduce me to some of your local distributors? By default, if a lot of brands do not deal with the public directly or with businesses directly, chances are they'll just send you a list of their distributors. And a lot of their distributors may have different opinions of Amazon sellers than CanPrev does directly. Obviously they do, because we see probably about a dozen or so sellers on that other listing that are selling that item, right? If we're talking to CanPrev directly and they do not have any distributors, say they just sell direct, we would have to attempt to convince them that Amazon sellers are not as bad as what they seem. So, in my opinion,
what could be the value addition we can provide to them? Because I know that many people, they attempt to try to sell these kind of things to them, we can do this and that. But once they get approved, they don't do anything. So instead of having more sale for the brand, so it's kind of thing the market is getting saturation. It's not getting more sale for the brand. So what can be done? Like, because I know the brands, they are more mature now these days. Like, but we are trying to tell them like they are not more convinced easily right now.
For sure. So yeah, like there are definitely some value propositions you can give to a brand, which typically works better with brands directly than it does with distributors. So you can analyze their products on Amazon, and if they have quote unquote shitty listings that can be optimized, obviously that's something that you can advise them. If you are able to do that, you can help them optimize their listings. You can help them ensure that minimum advertised pricing is maintained, etc. But if they already have those things, which it appears that CanPrev already does, that might be a brand that is on top of things. They may have a list of exclusive Amazon sellers and they do not want any more. That is very common. So what I would do is I would personally get on the phone with somebody. I would not try to do this over email. It's a lot easier to do on the phone, and it's a lot easier to sidestep objections when you are on the phone with somebody. And I would get them to tell me why. Okay, you say you mentioned that you do not want to sell to any Amazon sellers. May I ask why? Have you had any bad experiences in the past? And get them to tell you what kind of experiences that they've had. And if they open up to you with that, then maybe you can find a way in there. Okay, yes, maybe you had a bunch of tire kickers that are not willing to spend money with you or that ghost you. That's not me. I'm a professional business person. I'm here to make money, and with my initial PO, like based on the initial research I can see with your products, I'm probably willing to do, say, I don't know, a 10, 20, $30,000 order with you guys, because based on the volume that I see that you guys are selling on Amazon today.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yeah.
can do
So,
it. Then,
yeah,
sorry, go
please
ahead.
go on. Yeah, please go on.
Yeah, so you can find things like that, but it's going to come down to your personal comfort level and how you're able to talk to those distributors and how you're able to again sidestep those objections. I have a section here that we'll talk about today, the importance of kind of keeping tabs of the objections that you hear on a regular basis or that you think you're going to hear, and already have some answers formulated for those objections so that when they do come up, because they're bound to come up eventually more often than you think, then you have some then you already have some solid answers that you can refute those with and get your foot a little bit closer in the door.
Okay, so do you have any list of value propositions or some kind of refusal from the brands in which you successfully convince them that you can do the best and you are approved for selling?
I don't have
Do you
a
have that?
I don't have a list that I'm willing to share with anybody right now, but I could certainly revise the list that I have to make it more generic and share that probably in the next coming weeks for sure.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Definitely. So yeah, and like with that, again, some brands or some distributors, you may not be able to get an account with them right now. That doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that it will not be an opportunity for yourself in the future. Because just because a brand denies you right now, doesn't mean that they will not reconsider 3, 6, 12 months down the road. It's about how consistent you are, and really how creative you are, and how willing you are to speak to these distributors, right? Because most people, if you look at it from the perspective of the typical Amazon seller, most people send out an email. They say, "Cool, I want to open up a wholesale account with your company," and then as soon as they get rejected, the company never hears back from them again. There's no response from that person as soon as they get rejected, or like we said earlier, they end up getting a catalog, and then the company never hears from them, right? And in the eyes of a company, that's just a waste of time. So sometimes it may take some persistency. It may take 6 or 12 months of continuous talking with that distributor before you're able to actually open an account with them. Okay, so let's take a look at this guy here. So this one, we said that this one could be a potential private label product because we see Maple Holistics is selling it themselves. Let's see if there's other sellers on here. We see that there's 2 other sellers, but they are priced quite high. Let's see if there's any evidence that Maple Holistics actually shares the buy box. So I just come into Keepa, go to data, go to buy box statistics. So there is some evidence that they have previously shared the buy box. It looks like they're not actively kicking people off their listing. I don't see any major drops in here. So this may be a brand that's worth reaching out to. This does look like it's a brand that probably controls their pricing pretty heavily, because it might sell in between when they're out of stock, because it looks like they normally sell it for $32.95. and when they are out of stock, it looks like it might sell for like 50, 55 bucks. So this might be a listing you can only sell when Maple Holistics is actually out of stock. So that'd be something that you should consider before you do contact them. And then let's look at this last guy here. Okay, so this is sold by Jones Gear. The brand is something that is different. We do have a couple different sellers on here, but they are all Jones Gear. So that may be an indication that they are controlling this listing. Let's see if we have any history of any additional FBA sellers on this listing quickly. So I just come into data, offers. I filter by prime sellers and always include historical offers. So it does look like quite a while ago, or just recently, we have had some other sellers, but none with significant stock. And it's been quite some time since Amazon sellers have been on this listing, besides one. So then what I do in this scenario is that I'd actually open up this seller storefront and just see if there's any indication that this is the brand directly. So we would look into their products to see if they are carrying all the exact same products. And we can also do one additional method to see if the company name is linked to that brand as well, which we'll do in just a second here. So yeah, it looks like this is the only brand that they're carrying. So this would give me an indication that this is probably the brand directly. And since there are not regularly other FBA sellers on this listing, this would not be a brand that I would personally waste my time contacting. If you wanted to look on an Amazon listing to see if you could dig deeper, what you can do is when you come into an Amazon seller storefront, you can come up here and change the amazon.ca to amazon.com. And in the US, by default, it's required for the business information to be displayed. So we can see down here, we actually see the business name and the address. If we wanted to confirm to see if this was the brand, we could actually Google search this brand or this business name, and that may lead us and tell us that they are that brand directly, which is likely what that would probably tell us. Okay. So that kind of covers some basics for doing some Amazon filtering. So that is another method to find additional wholesalers. And you can also see that from doing that, you can kind of rabbit hole into stuff almost non-stop. And there's really no end to the amount of wholesalers or brands that you can contact or find. The rabbit hole just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper the further you go into it. So then the next thing that we're going to look at is filtering through a trade show directory. But I am just going to step away for a few minutes. I need a drink of water. I'm going to leave this here. I will be back in about 2 or 3 minutes here. I apologize. I'll just be a couple minutes. Sorry about that, everybody. I am back. So now let's look at how we can find some distributors through a trade show directory. So as we mentioned, obviously it would be more favorable to go to a trade show directly. But if you're unable to, or if they're in places where you simply cannot reach, a good alternative is actually looking through their trade show directories. And I was wondering, Jaden, you had previously mentioned about a trade show. I believe it was either yourself or Vinny that had brought it up. Did you want to share that trade show, and then we can look through the directory and see if we can find any viable suppliers through there? Just type in here. So Jaden mentioned it was tradersforum.ca, so let's take a look at that guy. And of course, you can always do a Google filter or a Google search to see trade shows that have happened in Canada. And then you can start looking through those directories. And it looks like Jaden has also shared a link to a extension. This tool somewhat gives you a quick overview on the product search page. Doesn't list who the seller is, but shows how many FBA sellers are on it. It's free and works in Canada. Great. So that does look like it may be an alternative to DS Amazon Quick View. Okay, so if we come onto a trade show website, we typically see something like this, which says suppliers directory. And this would tell us everybody who is registered to be at this trade show. And we can see here, it does look like there are probably a couple hundred different suppliers. And we could basically just come through this list, and then any that look promising in any way, we could reach out to them, contact them, and hopefully open up an account with them. So let's just look up a couple here that look like they may be interesting. And if this is your first time doing this, I'd actually just recommend going down the list and opening up every single one. And anything that looks like it's an item or product distributors or products that you think that you could sell, I would contact every single one. So let's open up a couple of these guys here. Looks like that's an auction house, but we'll take a look. I'm just kind of picking some at random. Probably will not be selling fireworks on Amazon anytime soon. Canadian surplus and Canpack. Okay. JG asked a question. In your experience, what is the average number of reviews in the past 12 months that a store has that indicates they are a high volume seller? So in general, as a kind of brief rule of thumb, your feedback rating is about 1% versus how many units you actually sell. Of course, there are things that step out of that norm. I have had talk to sellers that their feedback rating does not meet that standard at all, but that's kind of like a general rule of thumb. So for every 100 units that you sell, you should expect to get about 1 feedback, right? So then it comes down to what you think is a large seller. So if you think a large seller is somebody that moves 1,000 units a month, I would disagree with that. But if they move 1,000 units a month and you do the math, that means that they're probably on average getting, what is that, 10 reviews per month? If somebody is moving 10,000 units per month, they're probably on average getting whatever that percentage would be, like 100 reviews per month. So that's kind of a stat you can look at there. Okay, so AM Wholesale, just from looking at them, it looks like they are a clothing wholesaler. That is not something I would be interested in, so that would be one that I would pass on. AMR Trading is general merchandise, health and beauty, and perfumes. Oops, I did not mean to do that. I opened up one of my random searches here. Of course, it's going to open up a ton of pages. Okay, let's go back into that. So let's Google AMR Trading Limited. I'll close all these random product websites that it tried searching for me here. Going forward in these sessions, I will turn off these extensions. Okay, so I see random places for welding and sheet metal. That's not the one that we want to look at. So let's see if we can just Google the address quickly here. We do have contact information, so we could potentially just reach out to them via email like that. I like to typically do a little bit of due diligence on a distributor before I reach out to them, because there definitely are some shady ones that are out there. And see, this one looks like it's directly in a house, and it looks like it's just a generic email that was here. So this would be one that if you did contact them, I would contact them with caution. because again, it looks like they may just be an individual operating out of their house. The only way I would order from a place like this personally is if they accept a credit card and I knew that I was insured for the transaction. But in my opinion, that would be one I would not contact today. RMax had a question. Hey, are you concerned with some beauty health products in Canada without MPN or DIN numbers? I got a couple of listing removals over time selling more. So that is certainly always a concern. But any product that should require a NPN or DIN, if it is registered in Canada, if it's supposed to be, chances are if you're ordering from a Canadian distributor, they should already have that qualification on them. Because like things like shampoo, you might sometimes get a notification from Amazon that it's missing an NPN, but it's not actually required to have an NPN. I find that those are few and far between, but yes, if that does happen, you have to be willing to appeal those and go through that process with Amazon. But of course, if you're selling something like supplements or over-the-counter or non-prescription drugs, you want to make sure that they are registered and have that detail on there, so that if that does happen, you can pretty easily find the registration through Health Canada and submit that to Amazon. And I find that when you do that, they typically let the appeal go through relatively easily. Okay, so this is Campac 2000. I want to say I've heard of them before, but it looks like they sell a bunch of generic items. We have an email. Let's take a look at their website here. So it looks like they are primarily kitchenware. So this could be something that's viable. We don't really know until we get a catalog. They might just be selling a lot of generic brands. But let's see their contact us section here, and let's just take a quick look at shipping and FAQ. And when you are reaching out to distributors, when you are opening accounts with distributors, that is something that you certainly want to establish and ask. You want to ensure that you understand with your distributor what the minimum order quantity is. And like say if they have a really high minimum order of like say 5 or 10 grand and you're not willing to spend that, then that will likely be a distributor that you shouldn't even waste your time going through their catalog. But most distributors, they have a MOQ of like say a couple $100 to like $1,000. That's pretty standard. And then you always want to know if they charge any shipping or freight, or if they take care of that for you. And that is something you should always ask up front once you get a catalog from a distributor. So I don't really have too much information here. It looks like an okay website. It doesn't look anything too fantastic, but it might be worth reaching out to them. So do they have a contact us form? So yeah, for this one, it looks like they just have a generic email address. Usually when they have a Gmail address, that is kind of a red flag to me. So that would be one that I would contact with caution. And again, this may be one that if you do contact them and open an account with them, you may want to ensure for at least your first order or so that they do accept credit cards. Then that way, of course, that you're insured. So let's look at one or two more here. So we have Auction Max. This might be an auction house, but let's take a peek. So yeah, it looks like this is primarily a liquidation place. And so if you want to deal with liquidation, that's definitely a separate business model. It can be very similar to wholesale, but you just have to be wary of potential items that you might get that are used, damaged, etc. I do know quite a few people that do very well buying stuff liquidation, basically brand new shelf pulls or returns, and sell those on Amazon. Just make sure that if you do dig deeper into liquidation, that you understand the business model and the potential risks that come with it. Me personally, I don't deal with liquidation typically, so this would not be a place that I would personally contact. Gina asks, once you open a wholesale account and place an order, are many willing to send your items directly to Amazon or more so to a prep center? What's your experience? So I have found in Canada, that is not something that is very typical in Canada right now. Most distributors in Canada, I have found, you have to get them sent directly to you, and then obviously you prep them and send them to Amazon. That is something that is a lot more common in the US, just because they're probably used to a lot more Amazon sellers down there. And that is something that is great to have, but you also have to make sure that if you do find a distributor that offers that for you, that they do understand the Amazon prep process. You can't just assume that they do, even if they tell you that they do. And you want to ensure that they follow it correctly, label your products correctly, etc. Because obviously you're putting that that process in their hands, and if they screw it up, it's not their fault, it's yours at the end of the day, right? So there are some distributors. I have had some distributors in the US that offer that directly for the US, and I have heard people have very good experiences with those ones, but you'll want to also make sure that you vet them out yourself. Okay, so this one looks like AG Home, so it looks like a random home decor distributor. So let's just take a quick peek here. And this one, it looks like it's not even an active website, so that would be one that I would not contact. This is just a hosting website, so that is a red flag to myself, so that would not be a place I would personally want to contact. Canadian distributor, this looks like sports, outdoors, and weed or bong or glass equipment. Let's take a look. Smoking accessories. And for something like this, obviously, if they have only like smoking accessories, cleaning products, bong, stuff like that may sell on Amazon. Obviously, you're not going to probably be selling lighters too much or knives, but don't discount potential suppliers just because they have those items, because you may find some good items mixed in between those ones. It looks like they kind of have some generic stuff. This looks like similar to like a Santa distributor to me. Let's take a look. Currently closed for inventory. Okay. Do they give us any indication of what they carry? Of course, we wouldn't want fragrances unless you are doing hazmat. Oil, incense. Incense probably would not be hazmat, depending on what the oils are. Let's see our age here. And when I'm looking through things like this, I'm typically looking to see if these are generic products, like that they just got off like AliExpress or Alibaba, or if they're name brand stuff. Of course, if they're just importing stuff from China themselves, that is likely not stuff that we would want to look at, and it would likely be a waste of your time. So I'm just trying to see if they gave me any indication of what they carry. We don't see anything here. So this may be one, it may be a mixed bag. Don't really know off the hop if they'd be worth an account with or not. So I would just send them a quick email or fill out their application quickly, try to get their catalog and just see what they have. I would quickly look through to see if they carry, like, say, name brand rolling papers, cleaners, stuff like that. If it's all just generic stuff, then it would just be one that I would just say, hey, this is probably not a catalog that's for me. I'm not a fan of ghosting distributors. If you find out that you're not going to do business with them, or that doesn't look viable to you, I would actually reach out to them and tell them that. I do find that that can go a long way. So I believe that's the last one we'll look at this particular trade show. We're not going too deep into here, but we didn't find anything of note through this trade show directory. But if you go deeper into it, you may have better luck than I had today. But again, it's just a process of putting in the work, putting in the time, and just going through and just trying to look at and contact as many places as possible. JG asks, any experience with reaching out to US distributors and seeing if they can ship to Canada or trying to source American products? Definitely. So there are some distributors that will offer shipping and include that shipping in their price, or they may also charge you that additional shipping, or may not have DDP shipping or charge you duties. So you just want to make sure that if you do contact those distributors, you confirm that before ordering from them. And if you have to organize your own shipping, obviously you have to have that sorted before you order from them. If they do not offer DDP shipping or duties paid on delivery, whatever that means, you want to make sure that you kind of factor that into your prices, and you probably only want to look at items that have a higher profit margin. If they take care of all that for you and they deal with a border broker themselves, that's even better. But those distributors I find are relatively hard to come by. Jaden mentioned that Santa is on this list, so yeah, that might be an indication that we see some different types of distributors on here. So we might need to weed through the junk to find the good ones. Okay, so what's next on our list here? So then a few additional methods that we didn't cover today. Obviously, there are a lot more methods, but some other popular ones would be competition filtering. So actually going into other seller storefronts that you know are likely buying items wholesale, finding the brands that they're selling, and then reverse Google searching those brands and contacting those brands or trying to find their distributors directly. Or using software such as Jungle Scout, which can do similar filtering for you on Amazon. And there's obviously a ton of other methods that you can use, but I find that this gives most people a very good start to begin with. Okay, so then I'm going to touch base on actually contacting your suppliers. So we went through some of that already, but when you're contacting a supplier, you can add potential contacts into your CRM or however you're keeping track of who you contact in bulk and contact later, or add them as you contact them. So basically contact them and add them as you go. That's my preferred method. If you like to just find a bunch of distributors in bulk, add their information into here, and then reach out to them all in one go, you can certainly do that. Or that could also be something that you assign to a virtual assistant if you have one. You can have them fill this out with all different kinds of brands. You can have them do initial email contacts for you, whatever system you find works the best. And then I mentioned in here that the preferred method is always contacting suppliers by phone or in person if you can, but typically by phone. However, an initial email can always be a good introduction. Just keep in mind that when you send off an email, probably at least half of those places you're probably never going to hear back from, so you have to be willing to follow up with them. If you're not willing to follow up with them, then you're wasting your time contacting them to begin with. I do recommend making some phone scripts or email templates that you will follow and just adjust them as you grow and learn. So again, I have some standard ones here that I shared earlier with the community. These are just some pretty generic ones. And again, you can kind of adjust them to your personal taste, how you would talk, or to personal distributors. Some people like to personalize things to each individual distributor or brand, but this is kind of a good place to start. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really good to make a list of standard questions you might have for distributors, such as if they charge freight or shipping, if they have any minimum advertised pricing for their products or specific brands, if they offer any standard discounts, etc. I spelled discounts wrong. So those are just really good questions to have once you're able to open an account with a distributor. And again, it gives the distributor a little bit more confidence that you know what you're talking about instead of you just going into something completely blind. And it's always nice to bring up something like minimum advertised pricing, because that just helps build a little extra trust with your distributors when they see that you're actually willing to meet minimum advertised pricing and you're not trying to piss off the brands that they carry. And then I also do recommend making a list of some standard objections that you might face or that you have faced in the past, and what kind of response you will have to help sidestep them. This is something that I would definitely recommend everybody do and keep building as you do this more and more and more. And soon enough, you'll have a very big list of all different kinds of objections you will face. And if you already have your answers sorted and figured out, that will make, when those questions pop up, you're already prepared for them and you already have a good answer of what to say. A lot of this is going to come from taking other people's suggestions. Like I will probably share a list in the next couple weeks of some standard ones that I've seen, but most of it's going to come from just having experience and just going through the conversations yourself. If you do have objections, like I said, I would recommend that you make note of them and think about it after you have that objection. If you freeze up or you don't know, and you do not know what to say, think about what could have been said and write that down as a standard answer, and you can use that going forward.
If I can give an example of an objection that I had in the past is they would say to me, "We do not ship, we do not use freight. You have to come and pick it up." At first, I was like, "Oh, okay, thank you," and then I would hang up and I would put it on the side and never contact them. But what I would use now is tell them, "Oh, well, we can arrange our own freight through UPS or any freight forwarder. Does that work with you?" And they would be like, "Yeah, that will work." So there's a lot of these types of objections that I had in the past that you can find solutions through trying to call and a lot of distributors.
100%, and definitely thank you for sharing. So like even when you have to organize freight, like with a lot of people, that may seem scary to begin with because I don't own trucks, I don't have a shipping company, but it can literally be as simple as sending somebody a prepaid UPS label and having them ship it to you. If you have a bigger order, obviously you might need to organize something shipped via pallets or whatnot, but it's not as scary as you think if you do have to do it. And it also gives you the opportunity to learn and to research those things to determine whether or not that is something that you can do. Definitely. Before we continue on here to going through how to filter some catalogs, does anybody else have any objections that they've faced in the past and kind of how they've grown or were able to refute them? Jaden mentioned return policy and credit policy usually depending on their location versus yours. They have a higher order minimum or limit for sure. Those are definitely things that you want to know as well. In my opinion, you shouldn't go into a relationship with a distributor expecting to return anything to them. And in most cases, if you make a mistake and you buy too much or a listing tanks, if that is a distributor you plan on working with for a long period of time, chances are you probably do not want to return items to that distributor because that may sour your relationship. Even if they have a return policy, in some cases it might just be better to eat the mistake if you made one. And yeah, if they have net terms or a credit policy, that's something that's super solid to ask up front too. Okay, so I don't see anybody else wanting to share, so that's okay. Okay, so now we'll get into kind of doing some basic sourcing through a old catalog that I had. So this is going to be a manual sourcing kind of session. So it's going to show how I would personally filter down a catalog and manually filter these brands in Amazon. Obviously, this is very time consuming, labor intensive, but I do feel that this is something that is important to understand how to do. And once you understand this process, you can either teach somebody else, like a virtual assistant, to do it for you, or you can also begin to start using software such as ScanUnlimited, Tactical Arbitrage, Bulk Scan Pro, things like that. I do feel that it is important to understand both the methods, because if you are just using software, like say you just use ScanUnlimited, chances are you're going to be leaving a lot of things. A lot of things are going to be missed, because software can only find so much. Software can only be as good as the filters and the information is that you give it. So if you have things that are like say multi-packs or mismatched UPC codes, if you do not know how to manually source a catalog, you're going to miss those a lot. And so in my personal business, we do a mix of both of them. Typically with a catalog, if we have access to a catalog with UPCs, like we will have in this example, I like to put it through something like ScanUnlimited first. Find the products that look interesting to us, and then go back in and then manually filter some of those brands going forward. So like say we find something from like the brand, I don't know, Crest for like toothpaste. We find some listings that look like they are viable or they're close to being viable. We would also go back into Amazon, manually search those brands, see if we can find any additional bundles, multi-packs, or if it's viable for us to make multi-packs on some of these listings as well. Okay, so then before getting started, I'd always recommend that you set your estimated criteria. It will help you filter through the junk a lot quicker. So that would be things like the standard sales rank that you want to look at, and then if you have any minimum profit and ROI requirements. I made a basic wholesale product criteria checklist. So this is just something that I would go through and I would make before you source a catalog. You'd ensure that you want to have your average prep and ship costs inputted into your on-screen calculator. If you're using something like SellerAmp, ASIN, RevSeller, or Seller Assistant. In my experience, typically 50 cents to $1 per unit for prep cost is pretty reasonable. Obviously, if you're using a prep center or have really prep heavy items, that cost would be more. And then for your shipping to FBA costs, pretty standard amount would be 30 to 50 cents per pound. It would obviously be higher if you're sending in less volume or if you're sending in oversized units. You'd want to set your estimated maximum sales rank or approximate sales rank. In my opinion, for most categories, most of the stuff you want to look at is usually within the top 2 to 3%. And then if you want to set a minimum that you have for ROI, profit per unit, profit per month for individual items, that's all good to have and set before you start sourcing a catalog. And then you also want to consider that if Amazon is on a listing, you want to ensure that they do share the buy box. You also want to ensure that the brand is not the only seller on a listing in general. In my experience, you want to make sure that the current or average selling price is about $15 plus in Canada. There are some exceptions for cheaper or smaller items. Most items, if you're selling at a sell price of less than that, if they cost you any amount of money, chances are in general they will be unprofitable. But of course there are exceptions to that rule. And then ensure that you've checked with your supplier if there are any restricted brands, and always ensure you can sell the brand yourself or get ungated for it. So once you have that information either saved or in the back of your head, then you can start sourcing a catalog. And so this catalog here is a decent sized catalog. This is one that I had back from 2019. I believe this came from a place called Horizon Nutrition or Horizon Distribution. They sell a lot of groceries, beauty items, health items, things like that. So obviously this pricing would not be accurate, but we are going to source it like it were to be accurate. And so the initial process for me, before I start digging into a catalog, is I like to filter out my data and make it as easy as possible for me to look through. So we can see here that they have different categories for personal care, and then they have baby care and different brands. And then they have body care, and some of these brands may overlap. And since we're going to be sourcing by brand, from brand to brand, I want to put all these brands together. So what I would do is I would select all the information here, and we can see that the brand name is in column C. So I'll just select everything in the spreadsheet here first. Go all the way down, and then I will sort this guy, and I will sort it by column C. And then what that will do is it'll put all the brand names together that were in column C, and we can see all the title names that were in column A have now been grouped together. So that's all stuff we do not need to look at. And if we scroll all the way back up here, so now we can see that all of our brands have been put together. And in this scenario, we have a brand, we have the description and size, we have the size over here, we have our buy cost, we have their best before guarantee date. So they give a guarantee that most items are at least 180 days to expiry or more. They have information whether or not they charge PST and GST on these items. Chances are if you're doing wholesale, you should be registered, so that shouldn't really be a consideration for you. And then they also indicate if they charge environmental fees on these items. I don't know if any do. And what kind of storage these items are. So if they're perishable, it'll probably say not dry, it'll say something else like cold storage. And then what we can do is then we can just start sourcing. So again, this is a very labor-intensive, time-intensive process, but I do believe that this is some of the fundamentals that are very important to understand. So we literally just come into the catalog, grab the brand name, come onto Amazon, and search that said brand name. So I like to go for all departments. When I search, I always put things in quotations, because that tells Amazon to only find things that actually have those words in the title. It does tend, in my experience, to give better results. I never look at sponsored listings. I always look at listings below that because I can't actually see the data down here typically. If it does pop up, then that's cool. But I don't see a brand name that looks like it's Global Healing. So this one we're looking for aerobic oxygen. So it looks like this guy is not on here. So then we would look at the next brand. So this guy's African Essentials. And essentially what we're doing is we're just going through Amazon's catalog one by one in terms of brand. So this would be the quickest way instead of searching every individual product. And then just pulling up the listings that look interesting to us within that brand name. And then seeing if our supplier carries it. So this one, it looks like we have one listing, but it has a very high sales rank. And then we're just seeing clothing. So that doesn't look too interesting to me. So let's find the next one here. I know once we get down to Alba, we'll probably find some stuff out of that guy. And so again, if you look at something like this, you can see that how time intense this can be. So you can also see how most people would not be willing to do this. So if you are willing to do this, if you are willing to put in the work and the repetitions, you're going to find a lot more stuff versus somebody that only wants to do scanning within the software. You're going to find way more stuff than what they will. But again, you have to be willing to put in that time investment. So now we're down to Alba. We should find some stuff within Alba here. And Jaden mentioned key for wholesale is minimum order quantity per unit. Usually it's a case pack of 24, etc. If an item is low volume and sells, say 50 a month, but split between 10 sellers, it's just 5 a month. So be careful of what you invest into from a cash flow perspective. Definitely, that is always something to consider. But also in my experience, a lot of smaller distributors or wholesalers in Canada don't always require you to buy full case packs. Even if items come in, say, like a case pack of 24, most of them you can buy by the each, right? So we can see with this distributor here, they're giving us pricing by the each. So chances are we can order as many units as we want. If it indicated that these were packs, we could only probably order by the case pack. And this has been my experience with many other distributors in Canada, unless you're dealing with relatively large ones. So yeah, if you expect you're only going to sell, say, 5 units of something per month, most distributors you can probably just order 5. Okay, so we see some interesting products here. We see Amazon's on some. We see some that are pretty cheap. So Amazon we can see that the FBA seller is a lot higher than Amazon, so that would tell me that they're not currently sharing the buy box. And then I'll just scroll through here and I'll just see. We can pick out ones that Amazon's not on, or ones that they look like they're sharing the buy box, and ones that look like they have decent pricing. So we'll pull up this guy. This guy looks interesting. I always like multi-packs and bundles. Those tend to be things that software does not find. If it doesn't have a rank, I like to take a look at it because it may have a suppressed sales rank. And with Canada, you typically want to look at, depending on how big the brand is, typically the first, say, 2, 3 to even 4 pages long. You basically want to look at the listings until you start seeing consistently high sales ranks. JG says, thanks for sharing your knowledge, Jordan. Much appreciated. No problem. That's what I'm here for. So I like to pull up about a half a dozen or so listings at a time and then start digging deeper into them. Okay, so let's pull up this guy. So this one is a 2-pack, so chances are this UPC does not match the UPC in our catalog. This is probably a random or exempt UPC. So this is one that looks like it sells some units. It's not crazy volume. We have one FBA seller on it. So let's see if this item's in our catalog. So this is Hawaiian shampoo. Shampoo and conditioner. So we'll come into our catalog. We'll search Hawaiian shampoo. Body BB mango, and then we just double check to see if that's a match. This is coconut milk, so that may not be. But yeah, you can definitely see that this does take some time. Drink it up coconut milk right there. So that is our guy that we're looking for. That's 350 ml. Our price without discount is $6.44. And 355 mil, so we can probably assume that the conditioner will be very similar price, if not slightly more expensive. So we have 644, so let's pull up a calculator here. 644 plus, we'll look up coconut milk. There is the conditioner, the exact same price, 644. So we're looking at a buy cost of $12.88 for 2019 prices. And so that would be an item that is a super solid ROI. It is a relatively stable item. It looks like it doesn't sell a ton. It definitely looks like it sells a little bit more in the springtime. But this would be an item that you could add to your potential buy list if you're dealing with this distributor here. And it looks like this guy sold 14 in the last month or so. So we might be able to pick up like 6 or maybe up to 10 sales ourselves per month. So that'd be an item that we could profit maybe 50, 60, 70 bucks on per month, assuming that the amount of sellers does not tend to increase from there. And then this would be an item that I would grab the information from the catalog. I would grab the SKU numbers. I would input it into my notes with Seller Amp here. Conditioner SKU. And then I grab the shampoo SKU as well, which is right here. And then you can just export this to either your potential products list or your order tracker, however you're going to keep tabs on your items. And I just do this because this makes it easier to make a PO for this particular distributor or find these items again in the catalog. So I would export this myself to my order tracker, my demo. It would go up here. I would indicate this is, I don't know, Horizon. And then once my script kicks in, this will move it and make a header for me. I don't expect most people are going to have something like this, but you can just use a standard spreadsheet. Okay, so we already found one item, and then it would be just a repeat of this for every single one. So this guy we have shave cream, coconut lime, 8-ounce 3-pack. This one, let's just double check to see if it's a suppressed sales rank or if it actually does not sell. This guy looks like it actually may move some units. Again, it doesn't look like it's too crazy, but this is kind of what we expect to see in Canada. We usually have to go wider than deeper in Canada. So we can typically expect to sell this for $32.98. So let's look up coconut lime. Or we'll look up this, however you pronounce that word, cream. And so we can see it's under Alba right here, 235 gram. So I believe that is a match. And right here we're looking at a buy cost of $3.76. So we just want to confirm if 235 gram is the same. So it actually looks like it's about the same size. So I would assume that's probably the same size. They just changed the packaging. And our buy cost for this guy was $3.76 per. So $3.76, and this is a 3-pack. So again, this is another item that looks like it could be relatively solid. We would probably expect to sell between 10 to 20 units per month ourselves. So if we sell even, say, 10 of these per month, that is estimated $70 per profit per month for this individual ace in here, assuming nothing else changes. So that is already another item that we found right there. And of course, if we can negotiate additional discounts, then our profit would be increased even higher and add additional profits to our bottom line. So let's pull up a couple more here. So this guy looks like we have a bunch of FBM sellers, one FBA seller. The FBA price has been relatively stable over the last 30 to 90 days. I'm just going to double check to see if they have been selling any. So it looks like FBA sellers are not moving on this product at their current price. So even though this does have a sales rank, it is more likely moving at the lower FBA price. So it's probably moving at like 17 to maybe 18 bucks. So if we were to want to buy this or sell it at $17, right now our max buy cost, depending on whatever indication you put in here, is $1.44. This is the account that we use for our US sourcing, so that isn't accurate here. But let's see what the buy cost is at a distributor here. So this is Hawaiian oil free. So this is Hawaiian oil free, moisturizing, aloe and green tea. And this is 85 gram. So that looks like it's probably a match here. And if this is a UPC code, like our UPC codes here might match as well. So this is 8123. So that is a match for us. And so, what is our buy cost on this guy? Our buy cost on this guy is $10.70. So if we want to sell this one and be able to dominate the buy box, we probably couldn't buy it at that price. So then we would just have to determine whether or not we can either find this from another distributor if this is something that we want to carry, or if we can negotiate a good discount with this distributor to make it worth it. And we'll look at one or two more here before we carry on. So this looks similar to the shampoo that we found earlier, or the bundle that we found. Again, this doesn't look like it moves any bit crazy. It definitely sells a little bit more in the summertime, which is expected from some type of tanning oil. Let's just see what kind of volume FBA sellers are moving here. Okay. So it looks like with this one, it's maybe moving, like it says, it's indicated that it's selling about 7 per month. So you can maybe expect about 10 to 15. We have probably 2 sellers that are within buy box price. So you might only expect to sell, anywhere from 3 to maybe 6 or maybe a little bit more per month of these guys. So this might be something it might be worth to add on to your order, but this wouldn't be one of our bread and butter items. Let's see if we can get it cheap enough here. So that is oil right here, and we are a 2-pack. So yeah, these guys cost $6.81 per, and this is a 2-pack. So I don't believe that would meet our requirements, but let's take a look. So we could profit like $1.50. No, that's at $29. So yeah, this one would definitely not be profitable whatsoever. So that would be one that we would not want to consider with this distributor anyway, unless we are getting like, say, like a 20% or so discount. Okay, and this will be the last guy that we look at for this particular method here. So 3127, okay volume, nothing too crazy. We have about 4 FBA sellers that are within the buy box. So with me personally, most of my listings, I like to personally profit about $50, $60 per month per ASIN. I'm not personally overly concerned about the total profit or ROI I'm making on any individual listing. I break it down listing per listing if it's worth my time and my effort. Of course, if an item is more of a pain in the ass to get or has really bad prep requirements, like if it requires bubble bagging, things like that, those are things I take into consideration. Some people, especially with new people, you find that when they're looking at items, they have to have a minimum requirement of like, say, $5 profit, 30-40% ROI. That's mandatory. That's not always super realistic with wholesale. In general, wholesale, your profit margins are going to be lower than what they are with arbitrage. So just keep that in mind before you get into this type of business model. But yeah, for me, if I can profit, say, about $50 per month per listing, that is usually what I look for in Canada. If I was sourcing to sell in the US, that would probably be quite a bit higher. So this guy looks like it sells probably about 7 to 10 per month, but we have 4 other sellers, so we would be seller number 5, so we'd probably only sell 2 of these per month. So this wouldn't even be an item that I would even dig deeper into or consider myself. Okay, so that kind of covers the basics for manual sourcing. An additional thing that you can do that I like to do with a lot of distributors is when I first get their catalog, I do not negotiate pricing with the distributors off the hop in general, unless it comes up in conversation. I like to get access to the catalog, take a look at it, see what kind of products that they have, and then if I get a feel that I'm going to be ordering a lot from this catalog, if I go through and I'm finding 20, 40, 50 different ASINs I'm going to be ordering, I'm going to be spending 5, 10 grand on my initial PO. What I would do is I would add on an additional field and just calculate the price with a reasonable discount that I may be able to request. So I would just say I would do 2 separate fields. Say we do one for like a 5% discount, one for a 10% discount, and we would just do this minus this times 5%. So that will give us a 5% discount for everything. And then we can go this minus this times 10. And that will show us our discounted price for 10%. And then when I make my PO, before I'm going to be sending that to my distributor, I'll be putting all these items in my PO with the expectation that I'm going to get a 10% discount. And if I'm actually willing to spend some money with them for my initial PO, like say my initial order is going to be like say 10 grand, I can say, cool, here's my PO, this is what I want to order with you guys, but this is the discount that I'm expecting that I need to make this kind of, these products work for us in our business. And if you are willing to spend that money up front with a distributor, you are a lot more likely to get those discounts. If you're somebody that's coming on, that you're brand new, and you're just trying to meet the minimum order quantity limit, chances are you probably will not be getting any discounts. If you do, they will probably be pretty small. It's always worth it to ask. I would definitely recommend to ask. It never hurts. But I do find that doing a method like this is a lot more effective with getting that discount once they know that you're willing to spend money with them. Okay, so any questions about manual sourcing at all before we continue on?
Sorry if I missed something. I was just away from the desk. You would go first with the brand name, or would you go first with the product name, or the UPC while you're searching on in Amazon?
So if you're doing it manually, I have personally found that the most effective, efficient way is to search brand by brand and then pull up the listings that look interesting and then cross-reference your catalog to see if they're in your catalog. If you are doing it manually and say you're just searching product by product, you're obviously going to be looking up a lot more stuff. Whereas if you filter by brand, we're cutting a catalog of like say 4,000 products down to like say maybe a couple hundred brands. So when we do it this method, we're not sitting there looking up every individual UPC code. If you are doing UPC searches, that is where you'd want to introduce software like something like ScanUnlimited. I wouldn't recommend doing that manually unless you have a lot of time to search through these catalogs.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions at all before we continue on? Don't feel scared to ask any questions. Any questions are completely welcome here.
Actually, I have a question, Jordan.
Yeah, what's up?
Okay, so all things being equal, let's say there's 10 sellers, the buy box, everybody's selling at the same price, there's 10 sellers, you're going to get the buy box 10% of the time. Is that true, or does it also depend on the number of reviews and ratings that each seller has?
So in general, if all things are equal, yes, you would expect to receive a equal portion of the buy box. But we know that Amazon is not perfect. That is not how it always works. If you are dealing with other sellers that say have thousands or tens of thousands of feedback and you are brand new, that will certainly impact your chances of getting that buy box, 100%. I have found, and from my conversations with people, once you are somewhat established and you have a good feedback rating percentage, like say once you have like say probably about 20 plus feedback, that becomes less of an issue. It can still definitely skew in their favor more than you, but I find that it is less likely that you're going to not get the same buy box percentage if your account is at least somewhat established and you have like a 90 plus percent rating. If you're looking in Canada, what I have found makes more difference in Canada, if you get the buy box, is how many units you have available and how distributed they are throughout the country or how closer they are to your customer. There's tons of listings that I am multiple dollars higher than the lowest FBA seller, but the lowest FBA seller has 2 units. I have 20, 24, 60. I am dominating the buy box over them. And that is probably by default because my units are probably in general closer to the customer and the customer can get them a lot quicker.
Right. Okay, one other question. After factoring in, all of the costs, shipping, cost of goods, cost of acquisition, FBA fees, shipping fees from Amazon, what percentage of sales would you typically expect is a decent gross margin?
So again, that's going to differ from person to person. It's going to differ based on the suppliers that you have and the categories you're going to sell in. For me personally, most items, my requirements that I would take is anywhere from $1, $1.50 profit per unit, and even as low as 10% ROI. But I take that into consideration because I have employees at a warehouse prepping for me. I factor in the cost to have them prep those items for me in my calculations. So if I can pay somebody and profit an additional $1 per unit, I'm completely cool with that. If you're prepping everything yourself and you're spending all your time prepping and you're working a full-time job, you may not want to only take items that are going to profit you $1. You may want to have items that profit you like say $3, $4, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can always change and adjust as you grow. But in general for wholesale, expect probably on average about 15 to 20% ROI. Of course, it can be higher. especially if you get into
So
categories.
ROI means that if you, okay, yeah, I'm looking at it a little different. So I'm looking at it as a gross margin percentage. So when you say ROI, you're basically saying you spend $100, you expect to get $115 back or something, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And then like your actual gross profit itself, that is something that is very difficult to say because everybody has different expenses. I may have a gross profit of say, I don't know, 15%, my gross profit margin, because I have staff, employees, warehousing, whereas you might sell the exact same items and you might have a gross profit of 25%.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, and
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
yeah, when I'm talking about gross profit, I'm not talking about like the internal overhead costs. I'm talking basically just about, the cost of acquiring the product itself, plus the cost of shipping it to Amazon, plus the cost of Amazon fees and then FBA fees.
Right.
So basically variable cost.
100%. And also, like, say, like your individual prep costs, like I said, they're going to differ if you have employees, if you use a prep center, etc. Your shipping costs to Amazon are going to differ if you're sending in only a box or two at a time. Chances are you're probably going to be paying closer to like 50 cents to $1 per pound. Whereas if you're sending in say like 10 plus boxes at a time and they're all 50 pounds a pop, you're probably going to be paying closer to 30 cents a pound. So there are certainly a lot of variables that come into play with that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Hello?
Hey.
Jordan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. So about the like making business cards, so what should we write on those business cards? Like Amazon seller and with a professional email and sell our cell phone number. We'd also have to include our store name as well. I mean, Amazon store name or
So
what information should be on the business card?
Great question. So you should have somewhat of a logo made. So you can either pay somebody on $5 or $50 to make you a logo, or go on something like Canva and put one together yourself for free. You should have some type of logo or kind of like business name made in a professional way. And then I would include that. I would obviously include your name, your position, so owner, president, whatever you want to put. And then I would just put the business name, my email, a professional email, like you said, and my phone number. I don't specifically put on my business card in bold letters or whatsoever that I'm an Amazon seller. Again, me personally, I do not lie to my distributors, but I do not want to have that as a first impression, because if you just come out and just say to somebody you're an Amazon seller, you're going to have a lot of people that are less likely to talk to you. I like to have a conversation first, make an impression first, and then bring that up in conversation. So I would not include your Amazon seller storefront name on your business card until you are established or you are very comfortable with this. If you do have a website, you can obviously include that, but I wouldn't personally put Amazon seller or my Amazon seller storefront on my business card. I would want to have that conversation with the supplier first. Vinny said, what should we designate ourselves on business card? Really, you can use whatever kind of style of how you would personally talk or how you would refer to yourself. If you say you're an owner of the company, do that. If you say you're the president, do that. Whatever you're most comfortable with doing or saying. If you feel like a douche telling somebody that you're the CEO of your company, don't do that. If you're comfortable doing that, then 100% do that.
Thank you so much.
For sure. Okay. So if anybody has any other questions, certainly let me know. I'm just going to kind of discuss some of these additional things, some closing thoughts, and then we can kind of do some Q&A if you certainly like, and we can also take a quick look at ScanUnlimited as well. But as I mentioned, sorry. Go ahead.
I would just have some things to ask about. You showed us a UPC list, like a price list. Would you say the process is the same for a catalog? Like a PDF catalog without without a spreadsheet, which is not a spreadsheet, which is like a couple of images and then a code bar and barcode and all of those, would you say it's the same process, or would you say the different one if it would be an Excel spreadsheet?
Yes, so in general, it'd be a very similar process. It might be a little bit more complicated and time consuming for a PDF catalog because you obviously probably will not be able to sort different pictures and brand names together. So if they're not already bundled together by brand name, it will probably take you more time. But if you are manually sourcing it, I would source it the exact same way. And when it comes to PDF catalogs or things like with images, those become very hard or next to impossible to source with something like ScanUnlimited or TA. So it's very important to understand how to do this process for things like that.
Perfect, thank you.
Definitely.
Jordan, sorry, I have had experience with the like accessing to some catalog, especially with Purity Life. I think they're also one of the largest distributors of beauty brands and also some supplements.
For sure.
I gone through the same process you just showed us tonight, but yours were a lot more in depth, which was amazing. The thing is that does the distributors or suppliers of different categories give us any access to their catalogs, like after opening an account with them, or how we access to their catalogs?
So, like, are you talking about other distributors or Purity Life in general?
Yeah, I'm talking generally.
So,
I
sorry, just to clarify, like, are you asking how you would get access to other distributors' catalogs?
Yes, yeah.
So that would be the process of actually like opening the accounts with those distributors. So of course, like distributors, catalogs to distributors are like their lifeblood. That's their gold. Those are the things that they're kind of guarding with their life. Some distributors are very open to give you a catalog. Like if you open an account with Purity Life, it's super simple. You can fill up an application online, and you're pretty much always approved within like a week. Other distributors, if they're more complicated to get into or if it takes more work, you have to work at it and build that relationship with that distributor before you are able to open an account and get access to their catalog. But when you open an account with a distributor, then by default they typically give you access to a catalog. It may not always be a CSV or Excel format. Some may have online only catalogs, or like Eamon said earlier, they might have PDF catalogs. Obviously, it's preferred if they have an Excel catalog like this. It makes it easier to source manually and with software, but you may not always get that.
Yeah, right. And just two more things. That first, that we've talked a couple of times tonight about the Sana distributors, which they're in Mississauga. I've personally visited their warehouse like a while ago. So the guy himself is is the same with the same name in on Amazon, and they're selling things, different in different categories. But I have used one of their invoices for I initially wanted to get it in beauty category, but didn't actually work that. But and with the invoice that I got from a specific beauty brand, I just only got engaged with that specific beauty brand, which was, I think, it was a kind of product that was used for the legs. It was a woman thing, but not the whole category. So what I'm trying to say is that their invoices works in and getting brands. So they carry a couple of brands, so maybe that's a cheap way to get engaged on certain brands, but I'm not sure if the products might be something that we can use as source, because they're also Amazon sellers and they have a very very rude and worse customer service. So I'm not recommending that as a as a sourcing place. But we can I probably recommend that we can just get it using their devices for maybe Oral-B or Crest or some other brands that they're carrying.
For sure, and,
Uh,
and, and that's super good advice if somebody needs a distributor, and if they do work, like you said, definitely. But in
And
my
also,
in
yeah, and
my
also,
sorry.
yeah, Jordan, and one more thing. I know this is completely another topic, but I mean, since you're live here, I just wanted to that I'm following the baby pipes for day trading. You've shared with me, I don't like a month ago, so I'm still reading that and following that. Is it possible to get in touch with you somehow, like for 5 or 10 minutes? I need to ask a couple of questions about day trading. I know this is completely off the topic, but I mean, since you're live, so I just wanted to raise this question with you.
Potentially, that's something that we'll talk about after the session, okay?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so
For
much.
sure. So yeah, like with Santa, like you mentioned, if their invoices work for ungating, that's great. In my opinion, like if they are not nice to deal with, if you are just using them for ungating, cool. I would just rather use something like, because we know that it works for right now anyway, something like the Amazon method, or just finding another distributor if you could. If you have no other options, then yeah, use somewhere like that. But I don't like supporting businesses that don't support our community or that are not nice to deal with.
Yeah, I'm completely agree, and they have the worst customer service that they available in town. So that's why I'm not really recommending that. But their advice actually works.
Definitely perfect. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so I'm going to share some initial thoughts, some closing thoughts here, and then we'll also just take a quick look at ScanUnlimited and just run an initial scan and just kind of show you what it can do for people that haven't used it before. But as I mentioned, I do feel that it is best to understand both methods, so manually sourcing and be able to source with software, because it's going to come a time in your business, if you want to do it efficiently, in my opinion, you do have to know how to do both. And if the software ever stops working for whatever reason, you need to understand the whole process in general. But yeah, this just kind of goes through what we did. So it's just to set your estimated criteria. So I use that product criteria checklist. If that's something that somebody wants, I can certainly share that with you, and you can adjust it to however you like. And then I recommend organizing your catalog and filter out any junk data. So that's what we did when we got rid of all the additional brands at the bottom here. And if you want, you can either leave that at the bottom, or if you're going to run a scan on, say, something like ScanUnlimited, we would delete these guys before we upload them into the software. And then find where I was here. And then it's just a process of to begin filtering the catalog by brand, and using something like DS Amazon Quick View Extended or a free alternative. That just helps the process be a whole lot quicker. I believe you can do a very similar process with SellerAmp. Like say if you search the brand and you pull up the SellerAmp extension, I believe it can tell you similar data. I haven't used this method for sourcing wholesale catalogs before, but this may be a viable option if you already use SellerAmp. I just couldn't tell you for certain if that would work. And then, yeah, I'm going to adjust this catalog a little bit more, and then we will run a scan in ScanUnlimited. I opened up a new account so nobody could see my personal scans. So it's a free account, so we only have the option to run one scan for free per month. So we're hopefully going to make it worth it here. But I'll just kind of show you the effectiveness of it. So if I had the option to run multiple scans, I would actually run this scan likely with my regular price and then with my discounted prices as well. We can apply filters in ScanUnlimited to factor in the discounts. So it just depends on how you like to do it. But I'm going to delete these guys for now. I'm going to delete the GST and PST stuff because we're not concerned about that. I'm going to get rid of all this additional data at the top here. And get rid of these headers. And I just like to try to give the software as much only important information as possible, and not flood it with a bunch of random data that it doesn't need. So I think something like this might be good. So I'm going to save this guy. I'm going to download it as a CSV. And now we're going to go into ScanUnlimited and we'll upload this guy. So when you come to ScanUnlimited, when you first sign up, you obviously have to set some of your standard settings, like your inbound shipping cost to Amazon, your marketplace, things like that. I did that prior to our call. So what I'll do is I'll click New Scan. I will find our file here, which is right here. And then we can decide what kind of scan we want to run. So most scans that you're going to run in ScanUnlimited will likely be either a UPC scan or a keyword scan. That's generally the type of scans that this is most effective for. Most people use it for UPC scans because it's more accurate. But you can also come back into here and run a keyword scan, so you can actually title scan things. It's obviously a lot less accurate and it takes longer to run, but it can be a very effective way to find things that a lot of other people do not find. So we're going to be running a UPC scan today, and then we're just going to tell the software where it's going to find the data. So this is our example catalog. You can name it whatever you want. Our product ID, so that would be our UPC code, would be under UPC. Our cost column is under the price column. And then we can also have the software display additional data if we want to display it on our screen here. So I want it to show me the brand name and the SKU and all this data. It's going to show me the price by default. Okay, I think that looks good. We're only looking for new items, Canadian currency. Then we'll click start. And so I believe this catalog is like 4,000 products or so. I believe it's something like that. Let's see. Yeah, so it's just over 4,000 products, but we'll see how fast these scans actually are. So we can see it's already running and it's already 20% done. So to do a scan on a catalog of, like, say 4,000 products, it's going to take typically less than a minute. And this is just actively comparing all the UPCs against Amazon's database. And then it'll display all the results for us, and it'll tell us if those items are profitable, what their sales ranks are, things of that nature. So while this loads here, if anybody has any additional questions, certainly let me know. Gina mentioned that she put senior partner on her business card, no pun intended. That is actually pretty funny. Gina, do you want to remind everybody how old you are? If you don't mind me, if you don't mind. I just think it's super cool that you do Amazon at your age.
I am 71 years young.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I thought that was really good, senior partner, right?
That is a good pun. I just had this conversation with some other people last night about the age requirements for Amazon and like how it's so flexible. And I mentioned you. I mentioned that you're in your 70s and you're doing Amazon and you're hauling ass, and I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate that very much.
For me, Gina is a great inspiration to just not give up.
100%.
Listen, I didn't even start until I was about 65. And, sometimes we're put in situations where lifestyles changes, work requirements change, health requirements change, and I had to find something I could do. Amazon turned out to be it, and 5-6 years later, it just keeps getting better and better.
Beautiful. Okay, so we can see that the scan has ran, and what ScanPower has done is it looked up the UPC, found the corresponding ASIN with that UPC, and then it gives us a bunch of additional data over here. If we scroll to the right, so it tells us what the brand name is, what our cost is in the catalog, what our expected net profit is. If we do what's called a power up, it'll tell us if Amazon is on the listing, how many people are on the listing, the current sales rank, etc. And we can come in here and we can play with these fields, display or not display any fields that do not interest us. And then this is a more effective, quicker, efficient way of sourcing through a catalog. And I would say that most people do this method, and I do this method as well, and I think this is a very powerful method. I just don't think you should only do sourcing through software. I think sourcing eventually should probably be one of your primary methods, but you should also supplement that with additional manual sourcing. And as I mentioned earlier, if you don't, you're probably just going to be losing out on a lot of stuff that you probably could have found otherwise. But yeah, we can apply filters like if we just want to look at things that have a net profit of greater than or equal to $1.50, we can do that. We can look at items that just have a ROI that are greater than or equal to, say, 15%. We can look at items that just have a offer count of at least 1. We're not typically looking for 10 sellers in Canada like we maybe would be in the US. We can look at items that just have a sales rank of X amount, whatever our requirements are. I accidentally filtered it by it, but it should apply our filters here if it loads for me. But yeah, so I mean that kind of shows you the power that something like ScanUnlimited can provide. I'm going to go back in here and see if we can look at a couple results. As I mentioned, I'm not going to go too deep into the software because I'm planning on having Carbon 6 do a live demo for us, hopefully this month, and they should be able to go a lot deeper than what I can. I don't know what happened to all my results here. What happened?
Maybe you chose the number of sellers is greater than or equal to 1. It should just be greater than 1.
I
It
think
may,
you
maybe, I don't know.
may be right. Let's just see if we can not apply that filter. I haven't had this happen before, ScanUnlimited, so I'm not actually sure what happened. Let's see if we can get rid of some of these filters here. But yeah, you can also do scans like this directly in something like tactical arbitrage as well. That may not be the best use of your minutes if you're also actively, there we go, if you're also actively doing like any arbitrage sourcing. Something like ScanUnlimited, you can do I think 1 free scan per month, or if you sign up I think it's something like 60 US per month, and you can run as many scans as you like. I think if you're even going to do at least 1 scan per month of a couple thousand products, it's worth it, but that is just my opinion. So let's see if we can reapply some of these guys here. So let's go greater than $1.50, and we'll just pull a couple results here. 15%, greater than 0, and sales rank less than, say, 30,000. Apply filters. And then if you do have access to catalogs and you do use something like ScanUnlimited, I would certainly recommend that you rescan your catalogs at least once per month. Things always change. Make sure you get updated catalogs with updated pricing, but some things may make sense a month down the road. Your distributor may introduce additional products. They may run sales, etc., etc. You never know. So then, yeah, you can filter through here. You can look at what looks profitable, what has a decent sales rank, etc. And then we can pull up some listings here. Pull up this guy on Amazon, and then you just compare. So it's somewhat similar to the manual method. It's just you get to filter out the data a lot quicker. So while I'm pulling up a couple of these guys here, does anybody have any questions at all? Okay, so with this guy, it looked like the brand was selling it, but it looked like our buy cost was $46. And with these scans, what's nice about these scans is these are UPC scans, so you can be probably about 90-95% certain that they are matches. So like in this case, this might actually be a pretty solid product, but it's only the brand that's selling it themselves. So if they haven't shared it with anybody else, that may be something you may not want to consider. But it did look like in our catalog, this was a buy cost of $46.71. So with the costs that we have entered in here right now, which are pretty high because this is my American sourcing one, that'd be a profit of about $9. I would not be mad with that whatsoever. And where did we pull up that Badger Bombs here? I believe it was this guy for $5.59. So we can see that this one here did not meet our criteria that we had mentioned earlier of $15. However, this is a very small product, so that makes sense. The margins may be a little bit higher because our referral fees on this item may be a lot lower, or our packing fees are whatever the FBA pick and pack fees are based on the size. Gina mentioned Marfil has been selling themselves for several years now, for sure. So this guy, it looked like our buy cost was 5 something, and our profit is only 4 something, so that one probably wouldn't make sense. And again, so you can see how you can pick up false positives in ScanUnlimited as well. It's not perfect, it's just software. It's only as good as what information you can put into it. So understanding the whole process from start to finish is another reason why I think this is very important. So this was the Stash Blueberry. Our buy cost was $2.97. So I have additional prep fees entered in here for $2. So the max cost is not realistic. Our profit would actually be closer to about $4. I just have a very high prep fee in here because this is my US account. But this might be an item right here that might be relatively okay. It's not a huge profit. It just depends on how many we can sell per month. These are super lights, 1 FN SKU, stick in a box. And if I can sell 6 to 12 of these per month, it might be something that's worth adding on to your order. And we'll look at one last guy here. So this one...
Jordan, while you're doing this, any general idea like how to avoid the price tanking in Canada?
So, like, are you talking about with arbitrage or with wholesale?
Online arbitrage, yes.
So it's not something that really can be 100% avoided. It's bound to happen regardless. It can even very much so happen with wholesale items. With online arbitrage, what I found works the best is to find more obscure suppliers or more obscure items that are not regularly found at many of the big box stores, or from websites that are available to scan on something like tactical arbitrage. The harder something is to source, the harder it is to ship, or the harder it is to find, the less likely it is to tank in price, the less likely likely to have more competition. So if you do that combined with things that, like, say, are limited time sales that other people can't find, or items that are hard to find or discontinued that you can find as well, I think doing a mix of those can help you build a very large, healthy catalog. And so with, like, the stores in Canada, like, a lot of people think that you can only source from Walmart, Canadian Tire, Shoppers, places like that. That's not the case whatsoever. I have a list of places that we personally source for our business for online arbitrage and my leads list, and it's over 450 different stores already. And all those are pre-vetted places. We know that they're legit. Most of them are places most people probably have never heard of before. So if you find a lot of places like that, that tends to make a very big difference.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I've just sourced only a few SKUs from Walmart. That's all.
Right.
I mean, a lot of other items I'm sourcing are coming from completely different stores.
For sure. And yeah, like, if you're just sourcing from Walmart, unless you're finding items that are either not available online or you're only looking at stuff that is regular retail price, you're probably going to have a relatively high rate of price tanking for those items. Because everybody's sourcing Walmart. That's where everybody starts. And it's also available heavily on tactical arbitrage as well. Okay, so if anybody has any additional questions, certainly feel free to ask. I think that kind of ends my spiel for today. I'm not sure. I hope everybody found some value in it. I'm not sure if somebody knew everything that I already discussed today. But again, if you have any questions, certainly feel free to ask. I will stick around for a while yet.
I guess, something which I've noticed is a few of the wholesalers have an online sort of platform to go buy their products, right? Obviously, in addition to telling them you're an Amazon seller, have you found some ways where you're like, okay, I appreciate your online catalog or platform, but I really need an Excel sheet to kind of go source to your product set. Have you found any, I mean, other than asking, any specifics as to the reasoning behind it? I mean, to me, it sounds like just saying, hey, you want me to buy more, I need to, the faster or the quicker I can source through what sells for me is because I have the analytics and tools behind to kind of be able to find the top selling products, right? I guess.
Right.
That's kind of what you want to be able to tell them.
Right, but you should also not go into a distributor or brand relationship expecting that you're the only one that's extracting value out of it. I find
Yeah.
that that's the wrong way to approach it. There are definitely some brands that only have online catalogs. Some of them they have Excel catalogs, even if they tell you that they don't. But there are some that only have online catalogs, and that's just how it is. That's how their business model is made, and they're not catering to lots of Amazon sellers. That's not their main customer base. So if you go there expecting nothing but an Excel catalog and you refuse to work with them if they have it, that's 100% only your loss. For me, if I find a website that only has an online catalog, what I'll do is I will either myself or get my team to manually source it, basically exactly what we did today, filter by brand, and then compare against the website into Amazon, or have something like a custom XPath made for tactical arbitrage, and tactical arbitrage can actually source that website for you.
That's what I was figuring out. I was trying to figure out if tactical arbitrage experts work on wholesale accounts. I guess they do,
Yeah,
which are like in a portal.
yeah. So like I get all mine made by Tactical Bucket. So it's like the same guy who makes all the easy bulk categories for TA, just because he knows what he's doing. Obviously, not every single website will work. So if you look at something like Purity Life, I've tried to get an XPath made for Purity Life. It doesn't work. They have anti-bot mechanics on their website that do not allow you to source through their website that way. But they do provide an Excel catalog. But majority of sites, I find that they work fine. So Javier goes in, he makes an XPath like he would for a retailer, but it includes a section where it includes a username and password that works with TA somehow. I don't know exactly how it works, but he includes your username and password, and I find that they work relatively well, just as well as like any OA site. Gina mentioned, sorry, Jaden, were you going to say something else there?
No, makes sense. I mean, I've been debating investing into tactical expander or tactical bucket because that's where the gold mine is. Once you have set retail, to source into those websites, sometimes some automatic helping, sourcing helps, but then to your point, you still need to go in there manually to review stuff, right? So it's good to
Sure.
have both.
But also keep in mind that that's not what Tactical Expander is. Tactical Expander just adds on some additional sites that cannot be added into TA. And I find that the selection for Tactical Expander in Canada is very minimal. They do not have a lot of additional websites for Canadian sites. And you can also use Tactical Expander to, like, say, pull ASINs from seller storefronts to reverse search in TA. But it's not for wholesale whatsoever. So, like, Tactical Expander, I think for most people in Canada is probably not worth it unless you do very heavy sourcing. I find that it's more worth it in the U.S. market, or unless you do like a lot of seller reverse sourcing.
Cool. Thanks.
For sure. Gina mentioned it seems likely that Amazon jumps on items from Walmart. Yeah, I mean that's probably one of their biggest direct competitors, so it does not surprise me at all. And they tend to always match or beat their price, which in some cases seems kind of crazy, especially when Amazon has crazy clearance sales. Vinny asked, any suggestions on managing credit card balances as we keep buying and scaling up? Balances seem piling up. So that's going to be 100% on you and how well in tune you are with your finances and how well you can manage your credit card statement dates, things of that nature. So if you are very in tune with your finances, if you are willing to take on the risk and the stress, I have talked to people in the past that had the same concerns, and they're like, okay, my credit card balance is becoming $40,000. I've never had a balance that much. It's crazy. And we looked at kind of what he was selling, how consistently he was selling, kind of the payouts he was getting. And I just said, if these things stay consistent to what you've been doing previously, you'll begin getting those payments in the next week or two, and you'll continue to get them every day or every couple of weeks, depending on what your payouts are like. And assuming you're making good purchasing decisions, and assuming you're using your statement dates correctly on your credit cards, you should be able to usually get those paid off before you incur interest. Of course, that can become very difficult if you are racking up huge balances and not selling items as much as you think you should be. Or if you're buying things at like the last date of your statement date, that way you only have interest-free payments of like 21 or 28 days. So like it's dependent on each person. I don't know, like we'd have to kind of discuss more so your situation and what would be the best way to do it.
On that note on interest rates, billing cycles which are set up by banks, have you had a chance to ever ask them to move a billing cycle? Or, I think from correct me if I'm wrong, the billing cycle typically is dependent on when you kind of start your card to an extent, right? So I mean, if you have two, three different cards, if you have two different AMXs or two different billing cycles, great for you, right?
Right,
Potentially.
and that's exactly what I do. So especially like when it comes to OA, so I've never asked someone to move a statement date. So like the way that credit cards work, if somebody doesn't know, is you can get up to like 55 days interest free depending on your statement date. So if your statement date is on the 15th, when your statement date comes out is when your grace period starts. And most grace period for credit cards is 21 to 28 days. So if your statement comes out on the 15th and you max out your card on the 15th, you have until the 15th of the following month, plus your grace period of 21, 28 days, whatever it is, to pay off that balance before you incur interest. A lot of people don't understand that, but that's how it works. So the closer you are to your statement date coming up, the quicker you have to pay interest on those items. And yeah, like Jaden, I personally have multiple different American Express cards that have different statement dates for that exact reason. It helps me maximize cash flow without having to pump it all back into credit card bills immediately. So I have one statement that it comes out, I think it's on the 2nd, and another statement that comes out, I think it's on like the 15th or 16th. Any other questions at all? I've seen Fargo unmuted. Were you going to say something there?
I guess a question from here is, in addition to your leads list, Jordan, do you ever think you'll sell a OA retailer list or a wholesale list? I know people charge $1,500 to get access to one of those, but I mean, it's kind of giving over the keys to your kingdom to an extent, right? With some websites.
So for wholesalers, I could probably definitely say no. That is not something that I would personally ever want to do. Those are my personal wholesalers, and I think you're better off finding your own wholesalers. For like say a list for OA suppliers, I'm actually in the process of building a Chrome extension that will list all the OA suppliers that we use, but it'll have additional features besides that, but that will be one of the key components. And it's just going to help other Amazon sellers confirm if websites are legit, see what their shipping thresholds are at a glance, if they're reseller friendly, things like that. And you'll be able to see in that extension as well all the retailers that we personally use or have vetted, and also retailers that we figure are a scam or you shouldn't buy from them.
Sounds good. Sign me up as a test user.
Sounds good. Gina said, thanks for sharing your expertise and time with us, Jordan. Always valuable information. 100%. Not a problem at all. Awesome. Totally going to buy that. When will it be ready? Not 100% certain yet. I've been working on it for quite some time. It can be a process working with some developers, especially working with some overseas, because I don't know any locally. I'm hoping within the next couple of months.
I guess, Jordan, you have your order tracker sheet, right? Which, some of us have the premium one as well. Would you recommend, for the order tracking purposes from a wholesaler, being any different from your online arbitrage in any shape or form?
The only real difference I would make is previously in the order tracker, I had a section in here individually for wholesaler SKUs. I've changed that in sake of making everything. Oh, looks like I didn't delete that and added a bunch here. In the sake of just making everything streamlined across the board and putting the SKUs in the notes. But that's really the only difference that I would personally make, because I think it's just important to have the wholesaler SKU. It just makes it easier and more efficient to place POs with those wholesalers going forward. No problem, guys. Some people are saying thanks. I definitely appreciate everybody coming out and spending the time with me. I hope that people can actually find some value in the information that I provide. Any other just general any questions in general when it comes to Amazon, wholesale, anything, let me know. I'll stay on here for another couple minutes at least.
Hi Jordan, it's Moroccan Boss Lady.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you yourself?
Good.
Let me ask you something. I never did bundles, and I've seen, here and there, but like how, like when you make them, do you actually look for, like, do you look for a listing that has a bundle and replicate it, and then you're like another seller, or do you make your own bundles?
So typically speaking, my general business model is I want to become part of something that is already selling, already has proven history. So
Okay.
if I'm going to look at something and consider making a bundle and spending the time doing it myself, I want to
Mm-hmm.
see items that already prove that item is selling. So an example would be like, say if I look up something like Paul Mitchell tea tree shampoo. If I look up Paul Mitchell tea tree shampoo and I'm selling liters or like the 10-ounce bottles, and
Right.
I know that they sell a ton or they look like they sell a ton, and
Mm-hmm.
I do not see bundles with a shampoo and conditioner like I see here, then I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, it's probably worth it to make a bundle, run probably
Mm-hmm.
some cheap PPC campaign on it to rank it a lot quicker, and I
Okay.
will own that listing until other people find it. I do think that's worth it if you do find other items that you can bundle together that already have
Right.
proven sales or that can complement one another.
Okay. All right. Yeah, 'cause I see a lot of people like having bundles, and I'm like, okay, well, that's it. Because if you start making your own listing, then there's no sales history on it. It just basically has, yeah, there's no sales history on it. So, yeah, go after the listings that have
For sure, and you're
the percentage of sales and everything already history of sales and everything.
definitely, and you are taking a shot in the dark when you make a new listing because it's going to be unranked when you first make it, and it's going to be
Right.
on the way back pages of Amazon, so it's going to be harder to find. So that's why when I look at making a bundle, I want to see items that already have proven sales history that can complement one another. I can put them together, only have one referral and pick and pack fee, and probably make more money off that bundle by putting those items together and probably giving the customer a bit of a discount. So like in this example here, like we see the tea tree shampoo liter selling for
Mm-hmm.
45 bucks. Chances are the conditioner sells for probably something very similar. So that's about $90, or you can buy a bundle here for 78. So that makes sense why this is ranked pretty high. That makes sense why this sells so well. I would consider all that when I'm making a bundle. I'd want to, in general, sell it for cheaper than buying the items individually.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
What are your thoughts on, I guess, items which, say it's Listerine and the Coolman flavor sells really well, but, a flavor which, also is selling in general isn't on Amazon listed yet. Would you go about ever thinking about creating the UPC? Like, I mean, they have UPCs already, right? So that's one step in the right direction.
Yeah, that's
Have you ever gone down the path of going through it, of creating a listing, and how difficult do you often find it? Or like we were talking about it the other time, right? Listings which are in the US that may sell but aren't on Amazon.ca specifically.
right. So that's where you kind of have to understand your market because just because an item sells in the US, sells hundreds or thousands of units a month, does not mean it's going to perform nearly as well in Canada. We are very similar countries, but we do have a lot of different tastes, interests, etc. Um, definitely have found products and listed additional flavors myself. I do find sometimes they can be very worth it. Me personally, again, I've been selling on Amazon for so long, and the process is so easy. Not making your own listings, as I like to say, I'm pretty spoiled. So I don't usually like to spend the time doing that myself, unless it's an item I figure I can profit a decent amount on for a long period of time. But it is certainly viable, and you definitely can do that, and I have done it in the past. But again, you're going to be, just like with a bundle, you're going to be going in blind a little bit if the data is not already there. So you're taking a bit of a chance. So you probably want to start off with fewer units. Probably want to run maybe a low to medium bid PPC campaign to get it ranked at least first. And once you have it ranked and you are selling units and you have some data, then you can work on keeping that item in stock. Gina asked, "Where do I find your spreadsheets and email templates?" I have a ton of free spreadsheets. If you just go to my website, Serendipity OA, a lot of them are at or serendipityOA.ca rather. A lot of them have titles at the top of the website, like the free order tracker, sales rank charts, things like that. And that will lead you to my Gumroad page, which has a bunch of the other stuff on there if I don't have it listed on my website specifically. For the wholesale stuff that you've seen today, the CRM, this is something I released completely for free. You can find it in the tools and resources channel on the Discord server. So just go under the welcome section and then tools and resources. It'll be the most recent link that's in there. It'll get you this guy for free and also the scripts for free as well, which I believe I have they're right here. So it'll give you a copy of each of these. And Vinny asks, you can create a bundle for any brand. You certainly can. Just keep in mind that if you are restricted in a brand, like say if you're restricted in Paul Mitchell, there are some people that get around that by creating a bundle and listing it as a different brand. I don't recommend that. Eventually Amazon will catch it, and if you are restricted in Paul Mitchell, you will become restricted again. It's just a matter of time. And yeah, when you're creating bundles or multi-packs, you're not actually using UPC codes, because obviously a bundle or multi-pack doesn't have a UPC. There is some stipulation in Amazon that says like the manufacturer has to have has to make those by the factory by default. There's a lot of people that say that you have to, like the manufacturer has to put those together for you. I've had lots of success just asking for a G10 exemption. It doesn't work every time, so I would definitely recommend trying to make the listing before you buy the items. But probably like 90% of the time it's worked fine for me.
Hey, Jordan, sorry to bring back the subject of PPC. Just have a couple of questions. Let's say that we are not on the buy box, but we are running a PPC campaign. Does it mean that it's going to be the buy box owner who's going to get the sales, or we're going to do a PPC campaign is going to direct those customers to our page, the listing with our storefront as the quote-unquote buy box?
Great question. So whenever you see a sponsored ad, so this is a PPC campaign right here. If this is your sponsored ad, as soon as you open that, as soon as a customer clicks on that listing, you will automatically be in the buy box. So I haven't done that much extensive research into it yet. There are some people that were in the server talking about it. They were asking, okay, what happens if I run a PPC campaign and I price significantly higher than the buy box? I don't know what that would produce. I would assume it will just limit the amount of times your ad gets exposed to customers. But yeah, anytime somebody clicks on your specific ad, you're automatically in the buy box.
With your, excuse me, sorry, go ahead.
No, I can, just to add to that, I haven't priced higher than Amazon, but I've competed with Amazon on the buyer box, same price, and I've done PPC, and I've actually managed to, not sell the estimated amount as compared to Amazon, but at least get 2 or 3 in a day, for example. So it does work, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure.
What I'll say.
Okay, so you had Amazon as a seller also, not just other sellers.
That's correct. At the same price point, not a higher price point.
For sure.
Okay.
Sorry,
I was
just gonna say that I compete with Amazon on tons of listings with and without PPC. So yeah, like Amazon definitely does share the buy box, and I like listings like that because a lot of newbies stay away from listings like that because they're scared of Amazon.
Yeah, that's the thing with you need to find if Amazon shares the buy box. Now, just when you because I've seen on your website that you have like a blog about an auto PPC campaign for all of the items. Let's say that if I understood it correctly, it means that if I put in like let's say $3 or $4 or $5 a day, those dollars going to be spread out through all my active listing, right?
Yeah, so like if you follow the directions on that listing, so like that's to set up an all SKU general PPC campaign that is not keyword specific. It's just a general all SKU PPC campaign. So you get to decide what listings you include in that campaign. So you can just do 1 or 2 listings if you want, or you can include all your products. And so whatever you set your bid at, say like you set a 5-cent bid, That just means that every time somebody clicks on your listing, you'll be charged 5 cents towards that campaign. And then you set your maximum or your daily limit. Say you set a maximum of $5. That just means that Amazon will stop running your campaigns after it hits the max of $5 for that day.
Okay, yeah, understand. So you said that you set up the 5 cents per click. Do you set it up? Do you decide the price per click, or is it Amazon that decides it?
You 100% decide whatever you want. So in the blog post, it was a very baseline recommendation to start off with 5 cents just to see how it does. So that is just a very low starting point, and then you can adjust it up and down however you see fit. So of course, if me and you both have a PPC campaign going on, and you bid 5 cents on that listing and I'm bidding 10 cents, my listing is going to get more exposure than yours will. So you won't
Okay.
you won't know if I'm bidding higher than you, but that's why you should play with the numbers up and down and see how it kind of performs for you.
Okay, I understand. So, okay, so I'm not aware how does that bid system works. So it means that let's say that I want to offer 3 cents to Amazon and somebody offers 6 cents to Amazon. It means that Amazon is going to choose the one that put in 6 cents to put it as a sponsored post on the search page.
Correct. So you still might get some sponsored spots, but that person will probably get a lot more sponsored exposure than you will.
And I think Amazon suggests sometimes bids, like depending if it's a substitute, if you want top of page or not. But those are like 35, 50 cents a product. And if you have, 50 listings, that is 50 cents a click. And if you have a daily budget of $50, you could easily go through a daily budget of 50 to 100. I find like the 10 cents per click or 5 cents per click, which by the way only works on active listings which you have in inventory. If you don't, it doesn't like run on it. It works out, as a nice feeder system, right? If you want to go more targeted, then you just create an individual PPC per each brand, in my opinion, or per
Okay.
each stream.
So yeah,
Okay, so
sorry, while we're waiting here, I'm just pulling it up on my one phone here. I'm gonna pull up for an example because I typically have an all SKU PPC campaign almost all the time for all my products. So I'll just show you here. I'll tell you. I won't be able to show you.
yeah, no problem.
See how this one performed.
Because I'm really interested in putting a PPC campaign because I think in my initial order that I did a couple of months, well, a month ago, it's not getting sold as fast as I wanted. So, and just to get back to the bid, it means that even if I put in at 5 cents, if there's no clicks, there's no 5 cent being charged to me, right?
Correct. You only get charged when it gets clicked on, but that also means that you will be charged if it's clicked and somebody does not even purchase it. So you just need to
Yeah,
take that in
yeah.
consideration, right? So on my one account that I have, because I do operate 2 accounts, so this is my newer account. This campaign has been running continuously since June 19th, 2021, so about a year and a half or so. And in that time, my total spend on this all SKU PPC campaign was $1,862.66. And
There's only one SKU?
this is all SKU, okay?
Okay, yeah.
So this is a very low bid all SKU PPC. And in that time, that it cost me $1,862. The total sales it produced was $152,824. To me, that's definitely worth the investment.
Yeah, I think
Hey,
I'm
on
gonna
that. Is that like less than 3%? Not even 3%. I don't know my math. It doesn't give you any cost.
1.2, 1.3.
Yeah, it's on here it says 1.22, so yeah, it's very low.
Yeah, I've heard like the average is, even if you do a PPC campaign, if you get anything below 5, you're good, right? And I mean, if you account PPC, I think something which you could is when you sell an item as part of your seller and calculation, if you account 5 or 10 cents to PPC as part of your equation, it can, help you grow, in my opinion, right?
Yeah, and like I don't think it's always necessary a requirement for everything. It's just something that I have found worth it in Canada, so I do it. I find that it's most effective on items that have, say they used to sell very well, and they've been continuously out of stock here and there, or they've been out of stock for a very long period of time, and they get a bad sales rank because of that, because how often they've been out of stock. Doing just a small all SKU PPC campaign bid, or campaign rather, it can help re-rank that product and put a fire under it and get those sales back going again. Dayclone said Amazon PPC is like Google Ads. I realize that as I'm saying that my day job is marketing. Sorry. Yeah, 100%. It's basically just like Google Ads, and you can get specific into keywords with PPC, but you don't have to. You can just do like a general campaign, like I do, like it states in the blog post, and it's just a generic thing. You don't have to get too deep into it. You don't have to be too complicated. Yeah, that's really all you have to do.
You wouldn't know if any other seller is doing a PPC campaign in the same listing. So you would just bid and hope that nobody else is doing a PPC, or hope that your bid is bigger than theirs.
Right. If you're doing something like that where it's relatively inexpensive, yes. And if you want to keep tabs on it and really watch it, you can and adjust it. But if you're just doing it just because on items that you know are going to sell anyway, it's just going to produce extra sales. You don't really have to monitor it, in my opinion.
Okay, so a good strategy would be to start with 1 cent, and then if I don't see any results, up it to 2 cents, and if I don't see any good result, up it to 3, 4, 5, 6, and then stay maybe between the 5 and 10 cents.
I'd probably start it generally between 2 to 5 cents per click, and say like even like $5 per day. You're probably never going to hit that. And just see how it does, and then maybe do that for like a week or two, adjust it to 5, see how it does, and see what the differences are.
Okay, that's a good strategy.
Vinny said you need to be careful with PPC campaigns, especially doing auto campaigns. It's always recommended to do manual. By the way, I've been doing PPC for my PL ASINs. Why do you say that, Vinny? I'm curious. Because I do know that PPC is obviously the lifeblood, very required in a sense for PL listings. I don't think it's as serious for OA wholesale listings, so I believe that's why we can have some additional flexibility. But I'd be curious to see why you say you have to be careful.
I guess when you refer to automatic, is he talking about automatic in terms of the keywords, or is he talking automatic in terms of budgeting and amount of bidding? Because there's two elements, right? One's the bidding up and down, and if you let Amazon increase your bid by X%, then yeah, that's an issue. But if you have a daily budget in there, that should be fine.
Yeah,
I find it useful if you create a campaign and you do an automatic one, and then you figure out what keywords work best, and then you stop that and you do a manual campaign with those specific keywords which convert better. But that's more on an individual SKU basis, right?
Right. So Vinny said he means getting overspending. 100% agree with that, and that's why I would recommend setting a daily budget and a relatively low one. With that, like what Jaden said, you can get very specific in keywords and whatnot. Like I said, I'm spoiled when it comes to Amazon. I'm lazy. I don't like doing stuff like that. You definitely can get very specific. I would say that's more worth it for items that you're going very heavy on, or you want to increase the buy box even more. For me, I like to set it and forget it, so that's why I opt for the auto SKU, all SKU PPC campaign.
On that note of Facebook or Instagram or whatever Google has, has anyone ever thought of doing ads on those platforms for online arbitrage wholesale items? I know it works on a private label side. I don't know. I don't feel like people will be driven to Amazon and maybe buy off another listing.
I imagine you could, but I don't know if that would be worth the investment. It definitely could be. I just never heard of anybody doing it.
It'd be interesting to do a cost per click comparison to Amazon itself, right? And I mean, I guess it's harder to track the actual buy rate through other leads. And I don't know how much it costs. I'm sure it's more competitive because I mean, you're not just competing on Facebook for Amazon product. You're competing against everyone and anyone selling any product or service.
And I also imagine in that case, like say if you advertise on Facebook or Google and somebody were to click on that ad that you paid for, it would just take them to the Amazon listing and would not guarantee that you're going to be in the buy box.
Good point.
So you might be paying for somebody else's sales, which not super cool. Vinny shared a screenshot. This is me in the last 3 months for my PL product. So this is advertising. Spent $2.5K. How many produced 84 orders off of that? How much revenue did that produce for you there, Vinny? I know PPC is obviously a lot more expensive, a lot more average for PL. V Close, is that Victor? I believe I just saw your message on Facebook from earlier. I just seen it now about you trying to join. Sorry about that.
I have an all-in inventory campaign, which is like really realistically 5 SKUs. My ACOS is technically 10%, so I mean that's a much higher cost than what you have. But long story short, it's $17 spent, and I made $170 in additional sales or revenue.
Right, and also if you spread that out over more ASINs, it'll probably become a much lower average in general anyway, just because you have more variety.
Yeah, it depends on, and it shows you on a per ASIN level what your ACOS is and your spend and sales on each item, right? So,
Right.
in my opinion, the one where I'm struggling with ACOS is where Amazon's is a seller and there are like 20 other people listing, and at this point I'm probably trying to just break even or just get rid of my inventory. So,
For sure.
Yeah.
So Vinny shared a picture showing his overall sales. It produced about 4,100 in revenue. Making ACOS below 35% is my goal, but it's difficult for brand new PL. Yeah, I definitely get that. But yeah, I mean, as long, like, I see a ton of people losing a ton of money advertising for PL. So, I mean, as long as you're profitable and you can steadily build that brand and get more traction, I think that's all you can ask for at the moment. I see way too many people spending like 5-10 grand on ads and not producing any sales. And he said, yeah, that's what I mean. Very careful, for sure. Yeah, like when it comes to arbitrage and wholesale, if you set like a daily budget at like $5-10, that's not something I think we generally have to worry about. If anybody else has any questions, certainly let me know. I'll probably hop off in about 8 minutes. It'll be about 10 o'clock my time.
John, I know you released 2 mixed lead lists thus far. Do you see that being a monthly occurrence, or it kind of depends on when you have enough leads? And I assume the leads in there are the same leads which you ever share with your gold or silver list.
No, so my hope is possibly eventually that might be like a one time a week thing. I don't know when it'll get to that. One of my members did mention that one of the leads in the one time list was the same lead, but it was a different price and different supplier than one of their regular daily lists. That shouldn't have happened. I have things in place to avoid that from happening. They should be completely unique leads. Occasionally, I think things like that can slip through, especially if they're different suppliers or different prices. But in general, they will be completely unique.
Would you say the mixed lead list, would you say it's more closer to your silver lead list category or more towards your gold? Or, I mean, it's supposed to be a mix, right?
It's definitely a mix. So like the last couple ones that I've released, I believe most of them have like a minimum profit of like $3 or $4, but the averages were like $7 or $8 profit per and like 50% ROI. So it's definitely a mix. I would say they're probably in between the two.
And I mean, obviously, with the gold and silver members, they're in a day in, day out. They obviously know they're more experienced, I would say. I know you also even limit these to 20 odd sellers, I guess. I mean, based to your point of before, you never ever seen price ranking, things like that happening between your own sellers. I mean, considering there are 10 leads on each list or 20, for example, there's plenty to go around, right? And I mean, not everyone's buying hundreds of units in each listing, in my opinion.
So as with anything, price tanking can definitely happen, and I always, if I or somebody else identifies a price tanker and I can link that account to one of the members, I will obviously ask them or inform them that this is what they're doing. I can't make anybody do anything. If somebody wants to tank the price, that's up to them. I can't control what people do, and price tanking can always be a concern, even on my leads, even with how obscure we get. But that's why I try to be I try to provide as much variety as possible. I try to have very, very obscure sources and a lot of obscure sources, not just sourcing from places like Walmart, Shoppers, etc. We do a ton of manual sourcing. We used to do a lot of like TA stuff. Those I find tend to be worse. When we find stuff manually, those are harder for other people to find. And in general, so like the regular lists, they're about they're 10 leads per list and 20 people per list. Yes. The I've talked to many members. In general, most members buy anywhere from 0 to about 3 to 4 leads per list. We have quite a few members that buy it and they do not actively source on them because either they do other sourcing themselves. We have one guy in there who's a big wholesaler, so he rarely ever sources online arbitrage stuff. He just looks at it occasionally and buys stuff when he thinks it's a super good deal. So between that, it's very hard for anybody to actively buy every single lead every single day, because that's 50 new products a week, and also replenish them and also do their own sourcing. So that helps reduce price tanking by a lot. But again, it can definitely still happen, just like with any other arbitrage sourcing that you would do personally. It's something that I, unfortunately, if I could guarantee that it wouldn't happen, I would, but something I can never guarantee that won't happen.
This might be too in detail. I'll pause. I'll let someone else ask any questions before I ask my next question about it.
For sure.
Anything else? No? Okay. I guess, I mean, the leads list you have yourself, I assume you may or may not buy from it, obviously, but I'm assuming it's part of the investment you make with your sources, with your tactical arbitrage. It's always, it helps you break even in general, I guess, with, the cost overheads you have in general, I guess.
So with the leads that I provide to everybody else as my service, I never buy a single one of them. I would, but I think it's a conflict of interest if I do, so I don't. I have a growing team of VAs. Right now I have 7, so they do a lot of extensive sourcing. And yes, occasionally I will pull leads out myself and I will buy them myself and not include them on my list. But this year, like I've told many people, I plan on transitioning more and more back into wholesale to where I was before. So as time goes on, I'm buying less and less and less arbitrage stuff. So I'm pulling less and less from my VA team, and pretty much they're all going to my leads list service.
If I'm a seller who's deciding whether to invest into tactical arbitrage, the tactical bucket expansion, buy on into whatever other softwares, get a VA. I'm assuming, if you were to do a cost benefit analysis, I'm sure you've done it. I'm assuming your $200 per month ends up being cheaper, if not better, than some of, trying to do it yourself, in my opinion, right?
It depends on
each for their own.
It depends on the person. So like if you're somebody that can manage somebody and train somebody effectively, obviously over the long term, having your own VA and having your own leads would probably be more cost effective in the long term if you can manage that and train them properly. With a service like mine, there are definitely people that only use that for their exclusive sourcing. I don't recommend that to anybody. You should supplement it with your own sourcing. But it's definitely something that you can buy and make a very decent amount of profit on and spend little to no work doing it.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. I guess when February came around, there were a few spots open on your list. Is it kind of end of month people saying, okay, I'm kind of done with it, or is it more you opening more space? I know you open more spots on a certain list, but do you kind of expect the beginning of every month to have openings versus in the middle of the month, I assume, because it's a monthly subscription at the end of the day, right?
It is a monthly subscription, and so in February, when the additional spots came out, when all the public got the email, that was because additional spots were released in both of the gold lists. So when I did do a cost analysis at the end of the day, that is why I released additional spots. So I had told all the members about a month prior that this is what I'm doing and this is why we're doing it. It's because I was spending a lot more money training my VAs to do a lot more manual sourcing. It's very labor intensive. And at that time, with the spots that I had without the US list, I was actually losing money every single month. And I understand that as a new business, and I 100% get that, but obviously I needed to become a profitable business. So that is why I decided to release those additional spots. I informed everybody and gave them a heads up ahead of time. I gave everybody a month, and of course, if they don't want to maintain their subscription, that's 100% up to them. I don't blame anybody. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people, explaining my reasoning, my thought process, and the conversations I've had with other people, but similar to what I mentioned to yourself. And so, yeah, that's when I released the additional spots. I released 6 additional spots for each one, so it raised the total spots from 14 to 20. And I do not foresee ever releasing any more spots above that. I believe that is where we need to be at the max. And yeah, so on February 1st, that's when the email came out. That's usually only when the public gets emails for spots being released, because usually for the regular spots getting released, other members from other lists almost always pick those up before they end up going to the public. Not always, but most of the time.
So what I'm hearing you say is to get onto the gold list, you might not find any openings anytime soon. So your best way to get there is start with the bronze or the silver. You never know.
So sometimes, I always, whenever a spot is released, because I like to obviously give current members priority, because they are already my paying customers. They should have priority if they want it. They are always informed about a half hour when a spot is released before anybody else. And if it's not taken in that time, then it'll get released to the general mailing list. So it is usually easiest to get a spot if you pick up a spot on an existing list, like a spot like on the silver list. But again, if it's not something that's for you, I 100% get it. I don't blame you at all. Like, I'm not trying to sell my services. My stuff is always continuously full. I don't ever advertise people. I just try to provide a good service, and hopefully people talk about it and recommend it to other people.
No, appreciate all the information and you doing these sessions, right? I guess your long-term goal is also creating a couple of different extensions from the sounds of it.
Well, I just want to provide like services that I feel like I would personally use myself. So I see a ton of gaps and things that I personally want, that I could personally see value in. And if I can provide that to somebody else for either nothing, if it costs me next to nothing, or for a low price, or include it as a freebie for my current members, I'm 100% cool with doing that.
Fair enough.
I'm not here to get rich quick, make a quick buck, and make an exit. I'm here to try to build an actual real community and provide real value to people. Gina, sorry, go ahead.
Do you ever see yourself exiting the Amazon business? If someone offered you $5 million to buy your business tomorrow, would you do it? What would you do with your life then, though, is the real question, right? I mean, everyone's interests change at some point in life, but who knows, right?
It depends on where I'm at. I'm not personally specifically attached to Amazon. I personally enjoy the process of building a business and connecting with people. Amazon itself is just a platform. Amazon itself is not really who I specifically am. Like, I'm not specifically a piece of Amazon. I prefer building actual businesses. So maybe I would do that and go open up something else. I don't know, but it's hard to say until if and when that ever happens. Gina mentioned people go on vacation, get sick, or move on to other things. You were great about the issues when TA changed minutes, and it greatly affected your cost. For sure, I was very vocal about that too, and they ended up banning a lot of my accounts, all my accounts, for a short period of time. You're always upfront about not buying any leads on your list. I really appreciate your honesty and integrity. 100%. That's all I'm trying to do. Yeah, TA, I had 3 accounts at that time, and I was very vocal, and they didn't like that. 3 Colts, and they ended up suspending all 3 of my TA accounts. We've worked it out since, but they didn't like how vocal I was about it, I suppose. But yeah, when they introduced the additional scanning minutes and how heavy we were using TA with all of our custom XPaths, it added on a lot of additional costs.
What are your thoughts on individual members trading like storefronts with each other? Not storefronts, sorry. Trading retail arbitrage lists or wholesalers. Oh, go check out this wholesaler, go check out that. And I mean, it's a give and take, right? I mean, to me, I always think at Amazon there's plenty of business to go around. I mean, we're just a group of sellers in this room, but there are hundreds outside of it. And I mean, we all know there's always a buyer box that's rotating, so it's never a
So I don't
one
think
for all.
I don't think there's necessarily a problem with that if you're close to somebody and can trust somebody. So just to mention, if I found out that was happening with the leads list itself, I specifically state in the leads list if you share it with somebody outside of the group, your membership is going to be terminated immediately and you will never be let back on. But if you're finding like your own leads, wholesalers, etc., if you have a small group or a few people that you trust and you can network with, I think that can be super viable. I think you can both benefit from that, but you have to be really able to trust that person. But it can definitely help elevate your business for sure, because now you have two people essentially both working and you can combine your efforts more than double, right? Yeah, so Dayclone or Steven mentioned for Jordan's list, that's a no-no for sure. If that's ever found out, you will be blacklisted really quick. But outside of that, I think it can be cool. But like, I wouldn't come into a group like this with like say this many people in this chat and say, "Hey, everybody, we should share stuff together." That is asking for price tanking or people stabbing each other in the back, and that's that. If you have one or two people that you really trust, I think that can be super viable.
And I think it's more than just even leads, right? It could be just a storefront or a retailer, which are not the obvious, maybe. And even when it comes to certain leads, right? At the end of the day, you only have X amount of cash available to you to spend on a product, right? You'd rather have your, they say, have that saying, right? Keep your enemies closer than your friends. So if you know the other if you have control over the price tankers, or you know who else bought up the inventory, you much rather have it a friend versus a complete enemy. If you put it in that perspective.
But I like Gina. I hope you don't mind me saying I spoke to Gina previously, and she said that she has a good relationship with one of her friends, and they regularly buy the same stuff. Or one person will say that something is in stock at, I don't know, Walmart, and they can't find it at their Walmart, so they'll tell the other person that you should go buy this because this is super profitable. She had mentioned that to me, and I think something like that is super cool. So yeah, Gina mentioned that for TA, many of their customers were really annoyed as well, especially after they had just renewed annually, 100%. I paid for a service annually times 3, and all of a sudden they told me that I'm limited on my minutes when previously when I signed up, I could scan as much as I want, up to a maximum of 7 scans at a time. I know the frustration. I got very familiar with the owner of 3 Colts Yoda, to say the least. It works great having a partner who can share with and have done this for the last few years. Yeah, that's exactly what Gina mentioned. Yeah, so Gina mentioned that to me in a conversation that I had with her, and I think that can be super cool.
You mentioned, Jordan, a bit that obviously your dad's on Amazon, but what was your sort of background to getting into Amazon, or who was your mentor, or did you just kind of YouTube it all over the place? And would you say right now, as of today, do you have someone who holds you, not necessarily accountable, but someone who you, like, bounce ideas off to an extent, or have someone where you kind of go like, okay, this is where I want to get into next, per se? How important do you think it's to have that sort of mentorship? I'm not saying it necessarily needs to be a paid guru of sorts, but yeah.
I think everybody knows how I feel about gurus. So yeah, like when I started, I was an insurance broker, and in 2018, I was on a staycation, like, I don't know, October 2018, and I had previously had thoughts of selling stuff on Amazon myself. I was thinking about, like, you know, basically like the PL style, buying something from China, making a brand. I was thinking some type of sports and outdoors because I'm into that kind of stuff, but it was just kind of a afterthought that I had. I didn't know you could just sell random stuff on Amazon. And then when I was on my vacation, I came across a guy on YouTube called Reezy Resells who was selling used books. And he actually looked like he wasn't full of shit, and he was being honest, and you could actually make a living selling books, which I thought was insane. So instead of having a vacation that week, I spent, I don't know, 40, 50 hours watching his videos, listening to his podcasts, and doing research, and then started hitting thrift stores. And that's how I started. Started used books, went pretty heavy, used video games, and then just slowly transitioned into arbitrage, wholesale. Yeah, so when I started, I had absolutely nobody else I knew that was doing it. I guess you could say remotely Reezy was my mentor through his videos, but that was about it. I think having that can be pretty powerful depending on what kind of person you are. I think that if I had that, or even like a friend that was doing it with me at the same time, I think I would have probably grew quicker than what I did. So I think in that aspect it can be really cool, but also entrepreneurship in general can be pretty alone. Like a lot of people don't understand what you're doing, or a lot of people are too comfortable, or they don't want to take the risk, or whatever it so is. So I mean, you have to be willing to take that jump and leap by yourself. But that's also why having a community, something like this, where you can actually have people to talk to and bounce things off of, I think is super cool, which I did not have when I started.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's 11/11. Make a wish. At least 4 people in co-op.
Yeah, Steven said gurus are horseshit is probably what you think. Most, some are legit. I agree. In most cases, there are definitely some legit people that are out there, but I think they are few and far between. I think most people, obviously, they're in it to make money, but I think you can weed out those people pretty quickly that actually want to help people more than they want to make money. Of course, people, when they do stuff like that, they should charge for their time and their expertise, but they should actually provide some real value to somebody if they're going to do it. Gina said, having someone who understands Amazon because they're doing it creates amazing conversations, and usually you both have different skill sets that you can bring benefit to each other. I 100% agree.
Have you ever thought of going to any of those Miami seller conferences, which I've heard is happening, or ASD? I mean, obviously, as we grow into that, US space makes sense. I just don't think how sustainable it is, if we're a Canadian selling into the US. I mean, it's a good starting point, but who knows?
I think
I've heard about it.
I think ASD could be solid for anybody that wants to sell in the US or even in Canada, because it's just a big trade show. That's what it is. And they have massive events and a massive amount of vendors. So you could probably find vendors from Canada, which guarantee there are vendors from Canada that are there, or ones that ship to Canada, or ones that you could just work with in the US for sure. The big conferences in Miami and Mexico, I haven't seen any that are actually interesting to me that don't look too scammy or scummy.
Would you ever see a Canadian-based physical conference? Would you ever create one? Too much work and effort.
It depends. Like, I don't know. Like, it depends if you could bring enough value together and make it worth it for somebody, right? Like, ASD is obviously not centered around Amazon sellers. It's a big trade show just in general, just to connect with wholesalers, distributors, all kinds of stuff. I know that there have been get-togethers and conferences in Canada that other people have put on in the past. I haven't, unfortunately, been able to join them because I believe that was mostly prior to my time. But I have heard some people have had good experiences at prior get-togethers or conferences for Canadian sellers.
Yeah. I guess that was in a world before, digital technology like Discord allowed us to do things like this to an extent. There has to be a good reason to come and meet in person, in my opinion, right? In this day and age.
I kind of disagree. I think meeting in person can be very beneficial, and just getting to know somebody personally, I think, can be a lot more intimate and just cooler than talking to somebody on the internet usually.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Gina mentioned that Dang did one several years ago, and that's where I met my accountability partner. There you go. Yeah, Gina had mentioned to me she had been to one previously and met quite a few people that me and her both still talk to today. And that's another big benefit of having a conference, is just meeting people and networking with people that you probably wouldn't have noticed or met prior. I didn't mention that the conference sucked, but the networking was great. And see, that's unfortunate. I would hope that doing something like that, the conference would actually bring some value in it, but at least you got something out of it. You wouldn't want to spend the time or money to go somewhere and not get anything out of it. Isn't that where you met Julie, Gina? Or did you know each other prior? Yeah, that's where you met her. Cool.
What are your thoughts on those who create Instagram accounts and track every single week and monthly sale and just all those? I mean, part of them I do. I'm like, are you doing it for accountability or just to pretend you're a guru? In my opinion, would you ever create one?
That's not really me. Like I said before, I'm a relatively private person. This is the most talking to other people I've ever really done in my life. I don't care to flex on people. Like, yeah, if you want to do it and be accountable to somebody, cool. But you've never seen me post my sales ever, and I probably never will. I don't care to flex on people. Like I said before, I drive a very old vehicle. I don't flex Lamborghinis or anything like that. I try to be as low key and humble as possible. I think all that, if you want to do it and you can afford it, cool. But most of those people are just full of themselves.
So I guess in that case, Jordan, if Lamborghinis isn't your thing, where would you spend if all your Amazon money or your profits if you had an opportunity to?
Probably building other businesses.
Fair enough.
Yeah, like I don't know if you ever pay attention to like how often I'm on Discord or online, but most days I work like 12 to 15 hours a day.
Yeah, fair enough.
Gina asked if I spend my money on more dogs. My dogs, the two dogs that I have, are expensive enough as it is. One of my dogs almost died like a month or two ago by choking on stuff and aspirating, and that bill by itself is too expensive. So I don't think I need any more dogs. I don't need any additional vet bills.
Oh, I noticed there's something. I put a thing in the chat, the voice chat, saying how much of your business is currently wholesale. Did we answer that question?
Oh, I didn't see that chat. I'm not looking at the voice chat section. Hold on one second. Sorry, guys. I wasn't looking at the chats in the voice chat. RMAX said Seller Assistant app with their product view function works the same as Quick View DS. Yes, that's only if you subscribe to Seller Assistant, though. I believe it doesn't work if you don't have it. Eamon said you can use Jungle Scout to scan multiple pages and filter out listing where Amazon is a seller. That's exactly what I was talking about when I mentioned using Jungle Scout for sure. RMAX said, hey, are you concerned with some... Oh, he already asked that in the other chat. And Product Trader asked how much of your business is currently wholesale. So prior restock limits, I was about 80% wholesale. Restock limits hit, we were over by thousands of units and couldn't send in anything. So I don't know if it was the right move, but I figured that I could just obtain OA and RA stuff a lot quicker than wholesale, flip it, and make more profit. So I basically transitioned from 80% wholesale to about 90% arbitrage overnight after about not overnight, but after about like a month or so not being able to do anything with Amazon. And I've been slowly working my way back up to more wholesale ever since. So right now, I would say we're probably about 30% wholesale, and by the end of this year, I want to be about 80 to 90% wholesale.
What's stopping you, Jordan, from opening a third Amazon seller account?
I don't think you should even have two in most cases. I think in most cases it's completely unnecessary. The main reason why I opened a secondary one is when those restock limits hit, I wanted to send in more products. So that's why I opened another one under a completely different business, completely disconnected, different internet connection, different phone, different bank account, everything as much as you could do as stealth. Because at that time, new accounts had unlimited limits to send in. So I got a new...
So I mean, to your point, with stock limits hit, you don't see that being an issue in the future ever again?
Not to the extent as what they were, because Amazon, like everybody else, was pretty blindsided by lack of staff, people not being able to come in, people saying that they're dying, all kinds of stuff, right? So they've managed it since. They've made it more clear and transparent. Of course, it could always happen again, but I believe, like in a scenario like this, they adapt and learn pretty quickly. And now, as long as you're managing your inventory correctly, your limits can increase pretty rapidly. But yeah, like, so for me, also, like, the secondary account is just a bit of additional security especially because I have staff that rely on me for their paycheck and to maintain their family. So there's always a concern that Amazon will shut down your account for no reason. I don't think that's a super viable, like I don't think that's as serious as what most people think it is. Most of the time when people get suspended, it's for good reason. It's very rare that somebody gets suspended for absolutely no reason, and if they do, they can typically get unsuspended relatively quickly. It can happen, but it's very rare. So I guess the second account, it gives me a little bit more security that way too, but again, I don't think it's necessary for most people.
Fair enough.
Gina asks, how long does it take you to train your VAs? So all the VAs that come to us, they go through a minimum 2-week study program. So that's walking through all the basics of Amazon, Keepa, all the programs and software that we use. I have a training program made step by step with videos. They go through that, and even if they have prior Amazon experience, everybody goes through that, and that will take a minimum 2 weeks. And then it's basically on the job training from there, where they're sourcing. Me and my VA manager are continuously reviewing their leads and providing feedback. And by the time they're fully ready to source and at the point where I want them to be, from day one to the point where I believe is acceptable, is probably about 3 months. Gina asks, are they located overseas? Yes, all of my VAs currently are in the Philippines. Hustle for Life asks, do you hire VAs from onlinejobs.ph? Yeah, that's exclusively where I've hired my VAs from. I've had very good luck with my VAs. I've had very honest ones. Every single VA that's been with me has been with me for very long term. I've only let go of one VA, and that's just because performance was not adequate. But there was no hard feelings whatsoever. So yeah, I've had super good luck with that, but you have to be willing to filter out tons of results you get from, or applications you get from onlinejobs.ph. If you post a job, chances are you'll get a couple hundred applications. Gina asks, are you paying $5 or less per hour? On a public YouTube video like this is going to be, I'm not going to specifically say the amount that I pay my VAs, just for privacy reasons. But I can say the going rate for a VA. Again, it's going to depend on experience, but most VAs you're probably going to pay anywhere from, say, $2.50 to $4 US per hour. I did have a VA ask me for a salary that was about more than double what the standard rate that I pay VAs. It's very interesting because she seemed to have a ton of experience and knowledge. So I said, okay, I'm willing to pay you this much, but I want this guarantee of this amount of leads, this quality every single day, every single month. And she wasn't able to guarantee that. So, I mean, if somebody is able to actually provide you the value, I'm 100% cool paying them more. Yeah, Hustle for Life said, I was wondering about the monthly average salary. I pay all my VAs hourly. I also give all my VAs all Filipino holidays paid off. And the Filipino holidays, there's like 20 or 25 holidays per year. I pay them vacation pay just like I would with somebody that's in Canada. So they get a minimum of 2 weeks vacation pay per year. And if they've been with me for 3 months, I was just going to mention that, Gina, the 13th month bonus. So as long as they've been with me for 3 months before December, I will give all the VAs a 13th month bonus. It's a standard thing that's in the Philippines. It's basically like an early Christmas bonus. It's pretty standard for Filipino employers to do that. So I give it to them as well, and it's basically amounts to 1 full month worth of their wage given to them about the start of December to help them through Christmas. Prog Trader asked, do you plan on doing more U.S. operations, like for me personally or list-wise? Eventually, he said personally. So I have a problem maintaining the cash flow that I have just in Canada with the amount of products that we source. So I know I understand the additional amount you can make in the U.S., the favorable conversion rate, the additional volume. I just don't think my cash flow could really sustain it unless I take it away from my Canadian side. But eventually, I think I will personally expand into the U.S. myself. Yes, I just can't say when.
On that note, do you find it profitable to buy from the US and sell in Canada?
Yes, I do that all the time. I
Including
do that all the time.
including like customs plus duties plus cross border, all those components.
100%. I'll pull up something on my other screen here and show you. 1 second. I made a mini calculator to factor all that in because some items are super high profit that are not available in Canada. You have to be mindful of the labeling requirements and how things are required to have French labels and things like that. And you have to be considerate that if you buy drugs in the US like Advil or aspirin or whatever, they're probably eventually going to get shut down in Canada. But if if you know these types of requirements, you can make a ton of money getting stuff from the US. Where's my calculator here? It's very simple. I use this all the time. So it's a very simple spreadsheet that I input my total cost per unit in Canadian dollars. So I do the conversion. I indicate how many units I'm going to bring over in a single box. So with cross-border pickups, I typically max out at £30 per box because they just charge more if it costs more than that. I put in this section what my total border fees are. So that includes how much it costs cross-border pickups to bring the package over for me, and then ship the items from Ontario to me in Saskatchewan. If you didn't have to have them shipped to you, this would be about $45 less, and then it just simply calculates how much your total landed cost is per unit. So I do factor that in, and you can make a ton of money bringing stuff over from the US. Product Trader asks, can we do a QA on loans, especially with the current rate hike cycle, business loans? I do think that would be a good idea. I do think it would be even better if we can find somebody, say from like BDC, to come on and answer questions about that. So yeah, like if anybody knows anybody, has any contacts specifically at BDC, I think would be probably the best. Let me know, and I will try to reach out to ones that I've had in the past and see if they're willing to do a Q&A about it. QA on business insurance, I might be able to do some of that myself. I come from the business world. I can't get into like any rank specifics, but I might be able to answer some questions. I come from the insurance world. I was an insurance broker before. Hustle for Life does every product sold on Amazon.ca have to be labeled in English and French. Technically, every product in Canada has to be. Not saying that Amazon's going to enforce it immediately, but eventually when they do catch it, it will be a requirement. You can get by it by printing your own label. You can print it in English and in French and put that on top of the old label. It just takes more work, but you can do that for sure.
I guess you were talking a bit about, we were talking about Jungle Scout and a few other tools. Have you used the Keepa product finder to kind of go through, BSR and multiple different things to kind of find things which Amazon are out of stock on? Have you played around with that a lot?
100%. Like, were you at the session that we had last month when we did the online arbitrage sourcing? So, like, we started with the Keepa, we started with the Keepa product finder. So yeah, like I have played with it. When I mentioned in that session, I haven't used it as much as I should, and I still think I could spend some more time on it. I sent my VA manager a course to take from Chris Grant specifically about the Keepa product finder. So I'm waiting for her to take that, get all the knowledge from it, and then share it with me. So it'll be something that I hopefully learn more of in the next month or two.
Makes sense.
Gina asked you to do a session on sending to the U.S. and also sending from U.S. to Canada. U.S. to Canada, 100%. I'm very familiar with that process. Canada to U.S. I did connect with Ali from YYZ Prep, who is in our chat, and he is very open to doing a session like that. So yeah, I'm not an expert sending to the U.S., so I could be very limited in information I could provide to you. But I think Ali could be a very great resource, and he's open to doing a Q&A. So we could probably organize that sometime either this month or early next month.
I think for concession, it's also just like what sort of tax paperwork you may or may not need, or EINs, or even just like, I guess people don't even know how to get listed on certain marketplaces, or know even that you can set up, global settings, right?
For sure,
So
but
I think that would be about it.
I also think a lot of people overthink it, because a lot of people think you have to have all these tax requirements for the U.S., or you need reseller permits, all kinds of stuff, which in most cases you don't need any of that. A lot of people overthink it, so I think it's easy. I think it's better to keep it as simple as possible and just start.
Yeah.
Do we need insurance? At what point should we get it? Technically, yes. So Amazon has a requirement that I believe it's once you pass a threshold of $10,000 per month, I believe it is, that you're required to get it. So you should get it even before that, because they could ask for it at any time. They haven't enforced it in Canada yet. They definitely enforce it in the US. But it provides an additional layer of protection for yourself. So it's not super likely you're going to have a liability claim against you, but in the event you ever do, if one of your products hurts a baby, kills a dog, a lawsuit's probably going to be opened, and everybody involved is going to be, anybody that had their hands on that product is going to be involved, including Amazon, the manufacturer, and probably yourself. And just having that liability insurance that provides you, $2 million or $5 million worth of coverage can save your ass from going bankrupt. Do you have any recommendations, recommended companies to use? So I use one locally. I use a local Saskatchewan insurance company. That was what I have found for my personal best rate. So I would recommend finding smaller local companies and getting quotes through them. I would also recommend reaching out, if you do sell in the US, to Ashland Haddon. But with that, you do require an EIN or whatever the US number is for your claims to actually go through properly. But I believe their insurance can also extend to Canada, and is very reasonably priced. For multinational insurance companies, I don't have any great recommendations. I've heard people have good experiences with Zen Insurance. But besides that, I've heard most of the insurance companies, big ones, tend to be quite expensive for Amazon sellers. My insurance policy is like less than $1,000 per year. And I believe the company that I use, they only sell to Saskatchewan, so I don't even believe they'd offer coverage in other provinces.
Jordan, just a quick question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
How do we how can we determine that, for example, we have made let's say a specific amount of profit, for example, from month to month? Should we discuss this thing with an accountant, or if, for example, if we do that ourselves, like how we can do that, or for example, okay, I have made this amount of profit
So
in a given month.
For sure. So, of course, I'm not an accountant, and I'm not going to give you any real tax advice. You should always talk to a CPA. But I'm of the mindset, and again, not financial advice. If you're are you relatively new on Amazon? Like, are you just starting?
I started on July of 2022, right? So it's 5 to 6 months, I think it's.
Okay, cool. And like, if you don't mind me asking, what's your average revenue per month?
Honestly, I've been so my total sales is 7,000, because I haven't put a lot of things. I was just testing, so it's close to 7,000 sales.
So 7,000 total from the time you started to today.
From September, actually. So for the last 5 months.
Okay, cool. So again, not tax advice. Not financial advice. Technically, any profit you make, if you're not incorporated, you're a sole proprietor, any profit you make, you're supposed to claim as taxable income that is taxed at your marginal tax rate, whatever tax rate you're paying or whatever tax bracket you will be put into with that additional profit. In my opinion, not tax advice, CRA, I'm not saying anything. If you're making very insignificant amounts of money, I wouldn't be super concerned about it until you start making more money. You're going to have to come back and likely claim that income. You should talk to an accountant. But it wouldn't be something I would concern myself about until you understand the process and are actually profiting an okay amount of money per month steadily. That's my opinion. But once you do, you should talk to an accountant. Accountants are not that expensive, especially for sole props, if you don't want them to be, depending on what you want them to do. But you should understand the process of how to do your own bookkeeping, or make enough money where you can hire somebody out to do it, but you should still understand how to do it. And then you should hire an accountant and take their advice and ensure that they can save you as much taxes as possible.
Right, so that also includes changing to incorporation, because I'm solo proprietorship right now.
Yeah, so you're a sole prop by default. You don't have a choice. And
Yeah.
like I would recommend as soon as you are getting into your taxes, unless you have a good handle of them yourself, you should talk to an accountant. Because depending on the accountants, like my personal accountant, if I were to just do a personal filing with him as a sole prop for my business, it would cost a couple $100. When you become incorporated, that becomes a lot more expensive because it's a lot more hands-on. They have to do a lot more stuff. So my personal accountant, I pay him about $1,500 to $2,000 per company per year for filing, but that includes my personal filing, my business filing, my financial report, filing PST, filing GST, right? In my opinion, super worth it. I can ask him advice whenever I want. I don't have to pay him per hour, and he makes me my personal tax bill equal next to nothing, so he more than pays for himself.
So, for example, I mean, let's say that in a month, right? You have a couple of listings, you go break even with the sales. So when, for example, the income when the sales tax comes, so there's a kind of that goes to, for example, let's say to the government. So that means that you're on a kind of negative side, right? Because you're losing since you've already been in break even. And then you also have to pay taxes on sales. Then it means that you've lost on your initial investment, right, or sales.
Again, because of the potential negative consequences to myself, I'm not going to give you any specific tax advice. I'm not a tax professional. If I try to give you advice and it's wrong, I can be held liable for that, and I am not about that. But in general, yes, that's how business works. If you lose money, you basically get tax breaks. You pay money based on the profits that you yourself make or your company makes. But again, if you want to talk specifics, you should talk to a CPA.
Okay, thank you.
For sure. My friend got quoted $1,000 a month for insurance with selling toys. No toys, it's $250. That's crazy. I could see that happening in the U.S. I haven't heard of that happening in Canada. I haven't seen that in Canada. If it is in Canada, that's kind of crazy. They should definitely find insurance somewhere else.
Actually, that's $250 a month. And I was just saying, personal opinion is at least what I've learned is you can technically apply for a GST HST number before you're even incorporated, so you could have one even when you're a sole prop, which is interesting overall.
100%. Just having the GST, HST, and or PST number, depending on where you are, it just helps reduce that tax burden that you're paying. You can get it refunded to yourself, and yeah, you don't need to be incorporated to get it. But with your mention there about Seller Board could help you once you scale if you want month to month versus QuickBooks and accounting. I disagree. Seller Board is not an accounting software, and you should not use it as such.
No, I'm saying it can be this. If you want a month-to-month view, you can use Seller Board and or Excel sheet. And I wouldn't necessarily view QuickBooks as an accounting to get you your month-to-month. You could, but I'm saying they're two different softwares. Is what I'm saying.
QuickBooks is actually preferred over Seller Board if you want to actually look at real profits. Seller Board can give you Seller Board can give you your profit at a glance for what you're earning on Amazon minus your cost of goods. but chances are you're not adding your regular day-to-day expenses in there like most people. That's just redundant if you do. If you do and you add absolutely everything, mazel tov. Most people don't. But if you actually use if you use a QuickBooks or Xero or bookkeeping software, that is 100% what your accountant uses to file your taxes, because that is real profit and loss numbers. It accounts for absolutely everything, and you reconcile your statements so you actually see what you've profited or lost. So if those are up to date, that is the most accurate financial information you can have.
Fair enough. I guess bank statements and don't lie or not do your car or living expenses, all those expenses which technically you can expense, would help allocate your, I guess, the actual true cost and profit.
Right,
Makes sense.
but even like if
I guess even, I don't know if you guys know this, but like even on Amazon, like Seller Central, the app, I mean, I kind of find, in addition to it has a revenue calculator and the SKU economics built into it, which I find is nicer to look at occasionally. Before you never had that option, right? The whole revenue calculators to compare different elements and price points, as well as the SKU economics to just see from a per unit basis what you're making and what are your fees.
definitely.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know
But
if everyone's used that.
but I mean
So
that'd be something
it's good to
similar.
know.
That'd also be something similar to like what Seller Amp has on their fee calculator or any other on-screen calculator, right? Because from here, it just gives you a breakdown of what you profit after Amazon's fees and whatever expenses you input into there as well. Gina said file GST quarterly so that you get your money back to reinvest in inventory. 100% agree. You want as much money back from the CRA that you're entitled to as quickly as possible. But if you're just selling in Canada, you will probably end up getting a GST bill instead of a refund. If you're selling in the US, you're most likely to get refunds. Yeah, Hustle for Life said that exact same thing. I owe the CRA GST tons and tons of money for GST every single year. So I want to file with them as not often as possible. Okay, cool. So I said I was going to go till 10. It's 10:42. So I'll put a cap on it for 3 more minutes. I'll bring us to 10:45 or wherever you are, and then 45. So if anybody else has anything else they want to ask, let me know. Otherwise, I will be hopping off relatively shortly.
Yeah, just I just need like maybe a 3 to 5 minute about that issue that I just talked to you earlier. But if you're too tired and cannot have that, that's okay. I mean, maybe we can set up another plan if possible.
So that'd be something that I definitely want to talk to you another time with. But I'll also tell you, like if you're asking for me to invest into something or to start into something, I could tell you up front, I probably will not be interested. I do not have the time allocation or the energy that I want to invest into anything else. So if it is something to do with that, it may be better off to not spend your time doing that. It might end up wasting your time.
No, I'm just have a couple of questions about this day trading. I just need a quick information about
What do you mean for day trading? I don't do day trading.
No, I mean, I think you've shared. It was it wasn't you. I mean, you've shared a website of doing day trading. Via user.
No, I don't do day trading. So no, it wouldn't have been me that shared any information about that, and I probably wouldn't be a good guy to talk to about it.
Yeah. Okay. Honestly, I mean, all the time I was thinking that maybe it was you.
No, it wasn't me. I don't do no day trading. I'm not that intelligent. Oh, I'm not going to bed anytime soon. I just need to stop talking and have some water and feed my dogs.
No, yeah. Thank you so much. But yeah, okay, that's fine. Thank you so much, Jordan, and and like everyone else, we do appreciate your time. It was amazing. But yeah, Okay, thank you so much. I mean, I thought that I confused you, so that's good.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Jordan. Peace out.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining me as usual. And I did record this session, so I will be uploading this on YouTube whenever I can get the video rendered, either tonight or tomorrow, most likely. So if you want to go back and watch anything, feel free. If you want any of the stuff that I shared in the session, any of the documents with like the criteria checklist and whatnot, let me know. I could send that your way. And as usual, if you have any other questions, certainly ask them in the server anytime, and either me or anybody else will answer them whenever we can. And no problem at all. I hope everybody found some value in the session and enjoyed it. You spent the time with me, so I hope you got something out of it. No problem. Have yourself a good night, everybody. I'm going to take off now.